Good evening, everyone. Annie, you want to go a little louder? I don't know if that's loud enough. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Those of you standing in the back, there are a number of seats scattered throughout if you want. If you're comfortable and prefer to stand in the back, by all means, do so. But I did want you to know that there are seats available. Okay, we're going to get started. I think we're anticipating Councilman Anthony to join us momentarily, but I'm going to go ahead and start with initially an introduction, and then I'll walk you through the way the agenda for tonight's going to work. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure to meet, my name's Barry Lewis. I'm the Township Manager, have been for about 5.5 years now. Tonight's forum is intended to be an informational session to introduce the proposed developer and the project proposed for 45 South Livingston Avenue to the residents, and to take questions and hear concerns from the public. The members of the Township Council are present for the same reasons, to hear your questions and your concerns. However, this is not a regular Township Council meeting, and there will be no action taken tonight. Nothing is being voted on tonight, and I want to stress that. And for that reason, the Township Council is not going to discuss or debate as they would if they were going to take action, the proposed project, and are here solely to hear from the developer and the residents and your questions and concerns. The agenda for tonight is going to be as follows. After I finish this introduction, I will provide a brief background information on the project, how we got to where we are today, what that means in the process, what redevelopment is, et cetera. After that, I will introduce Jonathan Schwartz from B&E Real Estate Group, who is joined by his architect, who will walk you through some of the project. The architect can show you some renderings and things about the project. At the conclusion of that presentation is when we're going to have questions and comments from the public. In light of the number of people here and being cognizant of the amount of time, we're going to have a 2-minute time limit on public comments and questions, and that will be shown up on a timer on the screen. Once everyone has had a chance to ask their questions, and depending on what time of day it is, whether there'd be any follow-up questions. Obviously, if we're here into the wee hours, we can't have multiple trips to the microphone. Once everyone has had a chance to answer their questions, at that point, we will then close the questions and move on to kind of an answer and a response from the township through me and through the developer. We're going to make every effort to answer and respond to questions and concerns that are raised. To the extent those answers are readily available, we will provide them. Some people may ask questions that in order to make sure we provide a full and complete answer, there may be additional research, diligence, something needed, in which case we will note that. But we are going to make an effort to document every single question and address them either by answering it or letting you know that we have to look into it. Importantly, I want to address briefly certain rules of decorum for tonight. I know this can be a heated subject and people feel passionately. At the same time, we want to make sure that everyone is respectful and of everyone else's time, including the mayor, the council, the developer. So initially, as I noted, all the questions and comments will come after the conclusion of the presentation. For that reason, I'd ask that everyone refrain from yelling out questions or comments or reactions during the presentation. When it is, again, as I noted, time for the questions, we're going to start with a 2-minute time limit, given the number of people here. To that end, we'd ask everyone to be respectful of everyone else and their time. And one, do your best to adhere to the 2-minute time limit. If you're in the middle of a sentence or a question, obviously the mic doesn't get cut off, but we are going to enforce that time limit. Also, in the interest of everyone's time, it's helpful to not be overly repetitive or redundant. If you share the same concern and you can concisely say, I'm also concerned about traffic, rather than have 100 people all come up and talk about specifics of traffic, it would be in everyone's interest. I think it's saving time. Finally, we expect, and I fully anticipate, that everyone here will be courteous and respectful to one another and will engage in civil conversation. However, to the extent things were to get out of hand and people could not adhere to that, then there is always the possibility that the meeting gets adjourned. Now, as I noted, I will go through a little bit of background on the project, address some of the issues and how we got to where we were before I introduce the developer. I think everyone here is familiar with the site. It's South Livingston Avenue, just south of Mount Pleasant. It currently consists of the Walgreens building and the old Bottle King building that has a Dunkin' Donuts. And other than those two, it's significantly vacant at this point. It was because of the ongoing and increasing vacancy of the project, which was a product, I think, of not only the general decline in brick and mortar retail, but also that project itself is hurdled with certain limitations. The design of it was more suitable for one large store. There isn't any real store frontage or visibility on Livingston Avenue, which did not lend itself to smaller tenants. So as a result of that, for almost since I got here 5 years ago, there's been discussions about how do we redevelop that property and turn it into something that we could all be proud of and something that is more productive. To that end, the council authorized an area in need of redevelopment study in 2019. That is essentially a study where the planner, professional planner, goes out and studies any one or more properties, applies certain criteria under the local redevelopment and housing law, and determines whether those properties are eligible for designation as an area in need of redevelopment. Designation as area in need of redevelopment comes with it certain tools where the mayor and council can sort of custom design or zone for a particular project without necessarily applying those same rules to the entire zone. So for example, this property is in the B zone, and rather than amend the B zone and potentially allow things everywhere else in the B zone, you can use redevelopment to limit it to a particular site. After authorizing the study, the planner did complete the study. The planner came back with their report. As per the statute, a public hearing was held by the planning board. That was back during COVID, and we were on Zoom, and a number of people and residents did attend that public hearing on Zoom. Ultimately, the planning board accepted the planner's study and made the recommendation for designation to the council, and the township council designated the property as an area in need of redevelopment in February of 2021. Once we had that designation, we went about the process of trying to figure out what would be the most appropriate use and development for that property. And in part, we were guided by the master plan, both from the more recent 2018 version and even some of these recommendations were in the prior one from more than 10 years ago. And in the master plan, there are recommendations particularly for commercial zones, including in the B zone and at buildings, particularly in the gateways to the community, which this area is described as one of them, could contain 2 or more stories with residential units above retail to add a residential vitality to the downtown, and because the potential presence of residential units could reduce the use of automobiles for shopping trips and thus increase pedestrian traffic. And generally speaking, in the planning world, when you have an urban or semi-urban or a downtown type environment, which is sort of those R2 town centers, there is a tendency towards more dense retail and with residential over to provide that critical mass and bodies to support not just any businesses in that development, but businesses throughout the neighborhood and the area, all the restaurants and whatever. At the same time, we looked at not only that master plan recommendation, but the current B zoning and what could go in there, recognizing that the owner of the property was not going to let it sit fallow and empty and increasingly vacant indefinitely, and that they would undoubtedly do something, and if need be, they would do something that they're permitted as of right into the B zone. So in the B zone, there's retail, commercial, service, office uses, a number of other uses permitted. It permits 28-foot high, 2-story buildings with a 45% floor area ratio, has a 25-foot rear yard setback and parking within 10 feet. The property as comprised currently consists of technically 3 block and lots on the tax map, approximately 250,000 square feet. So at 45% floor area ratio, that would allow technically up to 112,000 square feet of floor area, which is more than double what's there now. Realistically, when you look at parking and the need and the setbacks, it's probably more in the vicinity of 80,000 square feet. And as I'm going to touch on briefly later, we plugged that into the parking models, actually at a lower number, a total of about 70,000 square feet, to see what the impact on traffic would be. The other important point was in the midst of all this, and many of you are aware of the ongoing affordable housing litigation that the township has been involved in, and quite frankly, every other municipality in the state has been involved in. And in our efforts to limit the impact and limit what we were essentially forced to take on, This was a project where this developer could very easily have intervened in that litigation, forced their way in, as a number of other developers did, as many of you may be aware. However, because we felt this was a desirable project, a need for redevelopment, and that a more positive outcome could come from working and negotiating with the developer chose not to get involved in the lawsuit, and I'm confident that had they, we'd be looking at a much bigger project. The other point to note there is that we're just wrapping up what's called the third round. A fourth round is around the corner in 2025, and if we didn't do something now with this project, it's inevitable that the developer would be going to court in that round, and again seeking, I think, higher density, more units. So once against that backdrop, we began to negotiate and meet with the developer to try and develop a project that we felt was suitable for that location, while taking into consideration the concerns that we had and we knew the public would have. The largely consisted of myself, Peter Klein, a longtime chairman of the planning board, and a number of different rotating council members, because they obviously can't all be involved at once. One of the obvious concerns, and I think that people are going to have, relates to, Andy, I don't know if you can put the screen up, school-age children, and we were very sensitive and remain very sensitive. We know that's a point of significant concern. And one of the efforts, if you're going to have housing, the best you can do is try and mitigate it, and particularly if you're going to have housing, forced upon you. And we have made those efforts in virtually all the projects we've dealt with, from trying to go with 55 and over projects to limit the bedroom sizes. One of the things in this project, there's two different components that were critical as far as mitigating the school impact. The first was that developers expressed an interest and a willingness to provide the affordable housing, which the numbers will tell you generate by far the most school children, in the form of supportive and special needs housing for disabled adults, potentially in partnership with Spectrum and some other nonprofit agencies in a site over on Route 10. The importance of that is it significantly reduces the potential school children from this project, while still providing us with the affordable housing credits we need. In addition, the developer was amenable to, and we negotiated for, only 1 and 2 bedroom units. There are no 3-bedroom units, and at minimum of 45% of these units have to be 1-bedroom units, which again will help control and limit the number of students. In that vein, the slide that I have up there, it's kind of hard to see probably, but we will, well, I don't know. There is a magnifying feature here, if I figure it out. And we will make this available and put it on the website. It's basically, Rutgers did a study, a comprehensive study of rental developments throughout the state. They studied, I think, nearly 1,000 developments, got all the information on bedroom counts, how many were affordable, how many were market rate, how many school children were generated by it. And it is in part also takes into account whether it's high-rise, mid-rise, low-rise, the income, average income of the residents, and then there's a whole separate column strictly for affordable. And it comes up with unit numbers, expected school children per 100 units. And you can see that the affordable by far has the highest ratio of almost 5 times as much on a 1-bedroom unit, nearly double on a 2-bedroom unit. So applying the Rutgers numbers, and again, this is a study that came out in the last 3-4 years. It's the most comprehensive study that was done. This particular project is projected to generate 13 school kids based on the bedroom mix and not having affordables on site. Again, I'm going to ask you to maintain, I'm only reporting what Rutgers studied. I'm sure all of you have your own opinions as to how many school children will be generated. Okay.
So here's the deal. Here's the deal, everybody. We expect you folks to act the way you would expect to be treated any other way. And to treat our town manager like that to start the meeting doesn't really start off very well. I have the developer here at his own time. You have 4 council members here, township manager, the assistant clerk, and a whole bunch of other people here on their own time because you folks asked to have a meeting, and we did. But to start off like that and not treat the people, not be respectful, because I don't think any of you act like that in your homes with your kids, with your parents, and with your grandparents. And if you're going to start like that, I'm going to tell you very quickly, one of us is going to call for an adjournment before anybody gets a chance to speak. So I'm going to ask all of you to listen, to behave, which sometimes I don't think is possible in this room with certain people, and to listen to our town manager. Give the developer the respect that, excuse me? Give the developer the respect that he deserves when he gets up to talk, and give our town manager the respect that he deserves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So, again, I'm reporting. I'm happy to share the study. It's a comprehensive study. We'll put it on our website. You can take it for what you think it's worth, whether you agree with it. We didn't just take the study. I then went to the Board of Ed, got from Dr. Block information on enrollment numbers from a number of the more recent projects, Hillside Club, Parkview, and others, and saw how we did. And full disclosure, we were slightly higher. I would not say double or triple, but we were running at about 140% of what the Rutgers numbers would have predicted. So even if you add 40% to that, it's still going to be less than 20 school kids. And those are the numbers, and that's based on also comparing it. The other thing, and I think it's important to note, is I also got information on the couple of the most recent single-family developments, which was on Overlook and Lafayette. There were 11 single-family homes and 13, and together those 42 single-family homes produced 30 kids, which is a significantly higher ratio, and essentially it says 17 single-family houses would produce as many school kids as this. And again, those are numbers. I'm happy to put them up. The other thing is traffic. And again, traffic is obviously a concern. It's an existing concern. It's in part, if anything, mitigated somewhat by virtue of this complex being so vacant. But when we evaluate potential reuses and what might go there, we have to assume that anything that goes in there, if it's new retail, it's going to generate traffic of a fully occupied. And it's not realistic to sit here and think that the owner of that property is just going to let it continue to stay vacant indefinitely. So we did ask our traffic expert to review different scenarios, the existing based on, and for those of you, some I'm sure are more familiar or not with traffic and traffic peak trip generations. They use the Institute of Transportation Engineers data, which is a nationwide, the gold standard for projecting traffic from developments. They have it based on hundreds of categories of uses and based on data and studies that they've done all over. We had them look at the current square footage of what's there. Again, using those numbers, assume that it's an actually occupied and functioning center. They came up with those numbers, and then we asked them to look at the numbers, and again, I apologize if this can't be any bigger, but there's the existing on the top line, there's the proposed if the affordables are off-site, which is then 240 units. There's the proposed if the affordables are on-site, and then there is what they could build in the B zone under the current regulations as a matter of right. And again, this was based on just under 70,000 square feet, whereas realistically they might be able to get 80,000. And what the numbers show, and again, I'm reporting it based on a professional traffic engineer that we engage who uses the industry standard ITE trip generation. So if you are not believing it, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just conveying what the data showed. And what it showed is that both the residential proposals, the current, whether the affordables are on-site or off-site, would generate fewer peak trips, both in the AM hour and the PM hour, than the existing complex if it was fully occupied and operational. The only one that was worse than the current one would be if they rebuilt something bigger with similar uses. So again, the data told us that, and the industry standards and the professionals that we rely on, is that the traffic situation, and again, it's not fair to compare it to current, because current, it's an empty shopping center that's not going to remain there. So now I want to jump ahead to where we're at, and it's important that people understand that. Part of that redevelopment process that I talked about, there was a designation as an area in need of redevelopment. There was an authorization to develop a redevelopment plan. The document that has been the subject of all the discussion right now is just that, the redevelopment plan. It's essentially like a zoning ordinance for a particular project. That was introduced but has not come on for public hearing or adoption or final vote by the mayor and council. The redevelopment plan, like a zoning ordinance, only sets forth the parameters under which a project can be developed. It is not a development approval. If this were to get approved in whatever format, there would still have to be a site plan application at which many of the questions that people have, once it goes to the site plan at the planning board, that is another public hearing. It's on notice to anyone within 200 feet, gets certified mail notice. Everyone else, it's posted and published the notice. At that hearing and in advance of that hearing, the developers at that point will have fully engineered drawings, drainage calculations, all the things that you would expect, which at this conceptual level have not yet been done. There will be full traffic studies both by the developer as well as the township's traffic engineer. There will be fully designed landscape plans, buffering, landscape. There will be an environmental impact statement. There are a lot of things that people ask questions, and I just needed to make sure people understood that that's at a different point in the process, and that would also be at a public hearing. Everyone would have the right to be there, to question it, to object to it, offer their own evidence, et cetera. But I wanted to make sure I did that. And then lastly, before I turn it over to the developer, I wanted to make sure that people understand, because as part of this conversation has taken place both at council meetings, online, and via email, there have been a number of suggestions, and we hear you, concerning traffic patterns involving Arden, Sherbrooke, suggestions of closing one, making it one way, other things. We are open to that. We hear you, but I do want to stress that's nothing that the developer has any control over, because those are not their property. That's the town and the town council and making choices, but those are certainly, so it's not fair to ask the developer to do that or what they're going to do about it, but I wanted to note that we heard those. We have our traffic consultants looking at it, and any consideration of that would necessarily, we would want to solicit significant public input, because obviously certain measures that we may or may not do would impact directly those people living on Sherbrooke and Audubon and Arden, and we would want to make sure that there would seem to be some consent. Obviously, if you close one end of it, then everybody that lives in the neighborhood could only get out one way. So I wanted to pass that along. So with that being said, again, thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to Jonathan Schwartz. Some of you may know Jonathan, longtime resident, family business that's located in Livingston, has been in business 70 some odd years. Jonathan is, he volunteered to come face this, and so I commend him for that. But please, again, be respectful. Let him make the presentation. He can talk about how the project evolved. I think he will tell you that in the ongoing negotiations, we significantly reduced the size, the scope, the number of units, lowered it. But I'll leave that to him and his architect. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Okay. So as Barry said, my name is Jonathan Schwartz with a company called B&E Real Estate Group. We are a 3-generation residential housing developer. We're fully vertically integrated. We build everything ourselves. We manage everything ourselves. We finance everything ourselves. We are long-term holders, so pretty much everything we build, we hold for the long term for our family, and we see it as a generational asset. So we think we build very high quality. As Barry noted, I live in Livingston. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up here. Other than going to college and living in the city for a few years, I moved my family back here. I've been back here for just about 15 years. My family's also built quite a few successful projects, and I don't just mean successful from a business standpoint, but I think successful for this town. We built the single-family homes in Bel Air. We built the townhomes at the Fairways, along with the affordable housing in front of it. We built 55 and over senior housing at the Point at Livingston. We most recently built the Hillside Club Apartments on Northfield Avenue. So we're a known entity here. We've built a lot of really nice projects that I think brought a lot to the community. So we're very excited about this project. For me, I live very close to this property. I think we're proposing something that is going to be great for downtown, right? Lots of people constantly talking about, I wish Livingston had a better downtown. I wish we had more restaurants, more stores, more walkability. This project is supposed to do that. You know, we have a town center, and town center had its planning faults and its design faults, but I think what we're trying to do here is do something that's going to complement that. And as Barry noted, creating a little bit of critical mass here that's going to help the other retailers and the other shops and the restaurants thrive by having lots of people that are not going to necessarily drive into that part of town, but going to walk from their apartments. I think that's an important thing to understand what these downtown projects do. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of where we've been and where we are today, and then I'll turn it over to Michael Lawson, our architect. So this project started, it's probably going back almost 5 years ago now. The town had started a process of doing a study to see if the property met the area need of redevelopment. It did. It was also consistent with the master plan. And I'm not sure who remembers, but back in 2021, we actually put on a public presentation. It was by Zoom. It was while things were still going remote in terms of planning board and council meetings. But we put on a 2021 proposal, which had been, more dense and larger bulk-wise than where we are today. And we're going to actually show you a comparison of the 2021 proposal versus what we have today. I think we made huge improvements by the many meetings we had, with the subcommittee, with various members of the council and planning board. And I think you'll see that we've come a long way from that design to this design. I think one of the things that I think gets lost in that redevelopment plan, and Barry mentioned it, which is this project, it talks about 276 units only in the context of if we end up putting the affordables on site. Our plan is not to do that. Our plan is to build 240 apartments and put the affordable housing obligation off-site in the form of special needs housing. And special needs housing is something that is obviously very much needed in this town and every town throughout the state. And we're not just saying that as a pipe dream. We control the property where it's going to go. It is next to both the Spectrum 360 School and the Lifetown Friendship Circle. Both those groups have expressed a huge need for having some kind of special needs housing in conjunction with their schools and their programming. So as far as we're concerned, unless for some reason we don't get an approval to build those special needs, which I don't think will happen, this project is 240 units over roughly what's being proposed today, roughly 25 or 30,000 feet of retail, with the balance of the units as special needs housing over on Route 10. So I think that's important to understand the context. In addition, I think that, and again, I don't want to dwell on it, but in terms of the traffic, what can be built here and even what's built there currently will cause more traffic than what we are proposing. Residential housing, especially 1 and 2 bedrooms in nature, generally have maybe young professionals. Generally, we don't get a lot of kids. The kids, it's not really debatable. The school kids are produced by the affordable housing units. That's just, Rutgers study will tell you, I build a lot of housing in this state, a lot of inclusionary affordable housing. It's because of the affordable housing units, which is okay. There's no problem with that. That's just the fact of the matter. This project is going to be 1 and 2 bedroom market rate, and is 13 is possible. I'm not even sure it'll be 13. We have no 3 bedroom units. 45% of the units need to be a 1 bedroom, and the town was insistent on that. So I don't think the school problem is going to be the problem that you all think it's going to be. I want to talk about a couple other things. There's a lot of chatter about, this site is fully impervious. This is not a wooded site that we're coming in and we are developing and knocking down all these trees. This is a fully developed site. It's got, I don't know, north of 85 or 90% impervious coverage. What we do is going to improve the stormwater management issue that is generally out there for massive surface lots, right? These buildings, the roof is going to collect the stormwater. It's going to go into a system, and it's going to go back into the drainage system clean. Same with the surface lots that we're putting in. We're going to be required, DEP is very stringent. We're going to be required to put in water quality devices underground that are going to collect and reduce the dirty water that goes into the system. So in any circumstance, this is going to improve what is currently out there from a stormwater management perspective. So we can jump into the plan a little bit. So this is just an aerial. I think everyone knows, where we are. So I also want it to be clear, we're not in front of the planning board yet. If we get to the planning board, there's going to be a process where the planning board's professionals, traffic engineers, civil engineers, landscape, attorneys, they're going to pick this plan apart. And we're going to have to produce traffic studies and engineering studies and architecturals. And this is just the concept plan right now. You may have a lot of questions I will not be able to answer because this is not fully engineered. It's a concept plan. We're showing the outline of a residential building. You could see some courtyards in the middle. We're also proposing a standalone single-story retail to the left of it. That's the existing Valley Bank. The existing Valley Bank is not changing, that's staying. There was some previous discussion about it being included. It is not included. So it's a 4+ sometimes a basement level plan. You've got an entry courtyard. We're going to have, I think we're going to improve the ingress egress in and out of the site compared to what's there now. It's a little bit of a free-for-all right now. We are going to restrict left out in some of the curb cuts. And so let's go to the next page. Michael, if you want to pick up now. So we're just going to show you some renderings. And Michael, you can talk to them for now. Sure. Either one. Okay.
So thank you, Jonathan. One of the things that we wanted to talk about more is how we're envisioning the site here. And we really thought that activating the streetscape along South Livingston Avenue would be most productive in terms of what the master plan was saying, as well as what we heard from the town. And we did that in many different ways in terms of pushing the building back and allowing for wide sidewalks, allowing for an arcade condition at the corner, as you can see right here in this area, as well as allowing for a really quite nice entry courtyard that allows for a roundabout for drop-offs like FedEx and Uber and those kinds of things that was off of the main streets. So you don't create traffic from those kinds of things that would be happening on site. This also allowed for the mixed-use building to have retail on the ground floor and then residential above, with lobby space being able to be activated there as well. So these are some blow-ups of what we envision at the streetscape along South Livingston Avenue, where we envision cafe spaces, sidewalk dining, those kinds of things that you see in many other locations throughout the state in these downtown areas, and something that we thought that Livingston should be part of as well. This is from the opposite side, looking south from Mount Pleasant. We're trying to do that on the corners of the building as well to activate those spaces as much as possible and hide the parking in back of that. So you're never going to have a parking garage that's actually on the street. We've activated those fronts with the retail and the residential. So this is a different plan. This shows our ground floor plan, and this is essentially showing exactly what I just stated. All of the parking is actually located behind the uses that we're lining along South Livingston Avenue, as well as along the entry courtyard. We're lining that with amenity, lobby spaces, and then retail along South Livingston Ave. As Jonathan had noted, we do have a separate retail building located here that does have a front onto South Livingston Avenue, as well as onto the entry courtyard that we're creating. We're also proposing several townhouse units here that have stoops and stoop entries into the residential building to activate that portion of the site as well. This is a typical floor plan of the upper level residential units. And here, what I want you to notice is how we've been trying to be sensitive to the rear property line. So instead of putting a wall of building along that back property line, what we've done is we created these arms that come out and create these courtyard areas. So you have one courtyard here, you have another courtyard here. That allows for these wings to kind of extend back into the middle of the site. We've also gone and stepped back the building on the topmost floor. That allows even more separation, which you'll see in some of the renderings that we're going to show in the next few minutes. As Jonathan noted, we are proposing 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units here. No affordables will be on site, and we thought that that was very conducive to the building itself. So you'll see here, this was the original proposal. So at the top here, each of these, sure.
Just before Michael gets into these, so this is, we're showing an original and then a proposed now. When I say original, this is back in between 2021 and now. This is based on a lot of discussion with the subcommittee. I just want to make it clear, and so you're going to see, we're actually going to show you where we actually reduced the building from originally to today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. So up at the top, you'll see either an original proposal or a current proposal stamp. So you can kind of see the differences between the two. So this was the original proposal. This is the current proposal. And what you can see here is that we've reduced the overall height of the building by a whole story. And that was in negotiations with the township and moving back and forth over the last several years. You can see that the massing has, on the ground floor in terms of the overall materials, the aesthetics, all of those different things, we've kept that. We're trying to propose red brick materials that make sense for this area, make sense for the downtown that Livingston has, with large windows as you get up into the residential units. This is the original proposal looking now south from Mount Pleasant Avenue, Route 10. And this is the current proposal. So you can see we've pushed down the building a whole floor, reducing that, but still maintaining the character and the aesthetic that was the original intent. Here you can see that we still have the activated retail on the ground floor. We have the architectural bay windows on the top floors and the large residential windows. This is the original proposal, now looking towards, this is in the middle of the site, looking towards the entry court. Here you'll see that the back portion here, that's where the change occurs. Essentially, a whole story is taken up in that area. So these are on the rear side of the property. So this is looking south in the back of the property. This was the original proposal. What I'll show you here is that there's no step backs. There's no significant change on the top floor. When we go to the current proposal, the whole building is brought down. There's an extensive step back, which essentially a step back is different than a setback. A step back occurs on that top floor. So you have an extensive step back on that top floor that allows for further buffering and a further decrease in the scale and the mass of the building. This is the original proposal now looking north, showing the other wings of the building. And this was where I was talking about the wings, creating the courtyards, breaking up the mass of the building. This was the original proposal, and this is the current proposal. Bringing down the floor, adding that step back, and really creating a much more conducive building to the neighborhood. And the last rendering that we'll show is this is the current proposal. So this is what we are currently proposing for the amenity deck, which creates a much larger pushback in the building. And this is where you would have a pool for the residents of the building, outdoor amenity areas, those kinds of things. But the major thing here is that we are proposing a lot of trees to be located along the edge of the building to buffer that building even further. We are only proposing one story, essentially that basement level of building, and then you have the courtyard on top of that. And the building is pushed back an extensive amount so to allow for those wings to occur and the breaks of the massing to occur in respect to the rear property owners.
I think also just, I want to mention, this is going to be a highly amenitized building, very high-end building with every amenity you can think of. Pool, gym, golf simulators, yoga rooms, co-work, very much designed also for an empty nester who is not going to come in and out of this project, in normal, rush hour times. This is really going to be geared towards that type of renter, and I think that's what we're designing for.
Correct. So I'm just going to flip back to this image. And just leave with the fact that we're really looking to design a building that really activates South Livingston Avenue in a more conducive way than what's there today, while allowing for mixed-use residential apartments on the upper floors. And we think that this massing really meets the objectives of the negotiations that we had with the township, as well as the master plan that you've laid out for yourselves.
I think in terms of our presentation, that's all we have. We're happy to answer any questions if you want to. Barry first.
Yes, so as I noted, we're now going to open it up to questions. We're going to start with a 2-minute limit per question, given the number of people here, because even at 2 minutes apiece, that could be hours and hours. There will be a timer up on the screen. Again, to the extent you can avoid being overly repetitive or redundant, certainly not to minimize. We want you to express your concerns, but if it's been said 20 times, you can just sort of ditto. That would be helpful and appreciated, I'm sure, by everyone. We're going to allow all the questions. We're going to do our best to take notes and note every question or every area of question. So if whoever wants to ask a question, you're going to come up to the microphone here. Just, you can form a line however you want to do it, but we will again wait till all the questions are done, and then we'll do our best to answer all those that we can. And if there's ones we have to go do some more research or something, we'll let you know that as well.
Excuse me, 1 second, just before we start, everybody's going to have to say it again. We just need your name and address when you start. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ray Siegel. I live at 4 Garnet Terrace. I've been to many town meetings like this before. I live right by the town center. I heard a lot of the same euphemisms and BS about that project. Empty nesters, not too many school children, traffic studies. This is something the town does not want. It exhibits tremendous greed. Why did you not start with an offer of a 10-story building and then get it down to just a 4 or 5-story building? There's just no reason. The whole concept of this needing redevelopment or rehabilitation is just total nonsense. There's nothing wrong with the buildings that are there. The Walgreens pharmacy is needed by the town. The Dunkin' Donuts is serving the community. The other stores were kicked out. They had signs saying, sorry, we lost our lease. The Bottle King, if they lowered their rent low enough, would get tenants. So this is just greed and empty promises. I heard the same exact stuff about the town center, and look at what we have now, something that nobody is happy with. How many cell towers will this building have? Is such a tall building? Why can't we just keep the Walgreens and the pharmacy? How are we going to fit the 500 cars that this building needs? And why can't we just have something that is more fitting in the community? We didn't move here to live in like Harrison, New Jersey, or live, it's not a train station town. So thank you, and please fail this project.
Sarah Goldstein, 12 Audubon Road. Please restart my time. Okay. The current redevelopment plan is still too dense, too tall, and ignores critical quality of life and safety issues. This activation of South Livingston Avenue places the financial gain of a few individuals over the best interest of the vast majority of the citizens of the town of Livingston. Simply put, the current proposal is unethical, unneighborly, and unsafe. The Town Council's initial support of the proposal was based on incomplete, misleading, and missing information about the impact on the town infrastructure, traffic, environment, schools, and quality of life. Builder and property owner, you have a unique opportunity to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new plan that's better. Come up with a plan that's civic-minded, neighborly, and environmentally and socially responsible. Find a way to significantly improve the community rather than literally destroying it. Compromise on making slightly less money than you originally projected. What you will gain is the support of your community. We want the new, Town Council, please help us here. Help us to do the right thing. Between the 5 of you, we have a group of extremely well-educated, successful, and smart people. We elected you to make a difference, and we trusted you. Do the right thing here. You know morally what the right thing is. Please leave the town better than what you found it. To the neighbor, to the builder and the property owner, how could you do this to your neighbors? You are in a position of social and economic power. Be the entity that uses this positionality to do better. Please do not ruin this town.
I just wanted to mention, because I forgot earlier, Councilman Klein is not here. He is recused on this because of a familial relationship. I just wanted to make sure some people, I think, were aware of this from previous hearings. And it also happens to be his 50th birthday, but happy birthday, Sean. But I didn't want anyone to think he was not in attendance out of not caring or otherwise. Thank you.
Steve Charney, Graymore Road, the resident of town for about 60 years. I have a question for you. I'm trying to understand a little bit better. I'd understood that the scale, the number of units was being scaled down. I was surprised to hear that it was at 240. At 240, and I heard what you described about there being access and activating it, restaurants and all that. On the surface, that sounds great because that will draw us in. We'll be able to enjoy our downtown. But at 240 units, how is there going to be parking? And how is there going to be parking accessible to the community in addition to the tenants to be able to come, be able to park your car and be able to enjoy all of this? Yeah. It seems a little dense to me, maybe more than a little dense to me, if it's still going to have enough parking for the community to be able to access and enjoy the active scene that's seemingly being created. And I didn't see or understand from your presentation where that parking would be and how it would make it accessible to the community. Thank you.
Indicated we're going to wait till all the questions are done because there may be the same question. We may have 10 people ask about parking. It's just more efficient to answer it. We are making a note of all the questions. Obviously, comments, there aren't answers to be comment, two comments, but.
There's a line.
That's all right, let them know. They're kids.
Good evening, fellow Livingstonites. My name is Jesse Agris, and I live on 42
You don't have to give
Sherbrooke
your
Park.
address. You don't have to give your address. Just state your name, please. Thanks. I don't
Being a
mind
resident of our town, I am concerned about this project. This complex will intrude the privacy of my house. This apartment is the scheduled 4 stories tall. It will be overlooking my entire house and my backyard. Not only that, but this project will bring unnecessary traffic to my street, making it unsafe for pedestrians, bikers, skateboarders, and people who ride scooters. Personally, I love to ride my bike. I do it almost every day, but this project, paired with no sidewalks on my street, will cause unsafe conditions for all pedestrians. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. How are you? My name is George Sosa. I have 2 properties in Livingston. I've been here for 9 years. I have a question. I came in late. I just wanted to get an idea. I own a brokerage firm in West Orange. I help individuals when it comes to the topic of Medicare, understanding it and making sure they have the right options for them. And as a business owner and a resident, will there be retail space, because I would be interested in possibly renting if it's positive for the community. I live here. I know there is issues and concerns, but what I do and what I offer in the community in the state of New Jersey can be beneficial to the community. But again, I don't want to start any friction with anybody here. I'm just curious, as a resident and as a business owner, I'm just curious, will there be real estate available? Retail? Yeah? Okay. It's too early to say how much, right?
That was good. That was a good comment. Yeah, that was fine. That was good.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Pretty Maida. I live at 3 Bonneview Drive. I was born and raised in Livingston. My parents are 2 very proud immigrants who have lived in town for over 40 years. They love this town. So at the beginning of the presentation, there were facts that were stated about how school-age children and families of school-age children will be affected. And then in the presentation, the builder stated that the project is also meant for empty nesters and people who may want to age in town and stay in town, may not have families, et cetera. Both of my parents are aging, and they've paid taxes for over 40 years in town. And so my question is, and my mom's in a wheelchair, by the way, what services will the town be providing to support these individuals without children who are aging in town? Will you be increasing the senior shuttle? Will you be providing more healthcare services through the town nurse and health programs? So I kind of have that's my question. Just, if you're targeting it towards elderly people, then how are you going to be supporting them?
Hi. I'm Linda Isaac. I live on Fellswood Drive. And my important question is, why isn't it the affordable housing included on site? It's a great location. It has buses and stuff, and kids and adults with intellectual disabilities, they would benefit from that because a lot of them use public transportation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lily. I live on Maplewood Drive, and Livingston is known for its schools. And as a student, I go to Heritage Middle School, and in our lunch periods, we are expected to sit on the floor because not only is the cafeteria too small, but the seats that are in the lunchroom, they don't sit enough kids, and although there are benches in the gym, there's not enough of them to seat all the kids. If there were more people living there in these new establishments, we would have more kids sitting on the floor and more kids in our classes. I don't want to eat lunch on the gym floor where people just the period before have been running around with their shoes that they've had outside, because I don't want to have my hands touch the floor and then touch the food that I'm about to put in my mouth. Also, looking at the pictures that you showed, as much as I want to believe that we'll have space on those sidewalks that you say you're going to make bigger for restaurants and seating outside, and for people to walk and bike past, I can't believe it, because there's too many kids in Livingston and too many kids on the sidewalks to have that amount of space. Kids want to go after school, they want to go to Walgreens, which will not be there anymore, and 7-Eleven, and to the high school, and the sidewalks just won't be big enough for all of those kids. There wouldn't be enough spaces for kids to hang out, and the town just wouldn't have places for all these kids to go after school. So, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Evan Brustein. I live at 17 Hearthstone Terrace. And I think it's a false premise to say that we have to allow this, otherwise we're going to have to allow a different affordable housing elsewhere. The fact of the matter is this is supposed to be a solution for affordable housing, but we've heard nothing about what the actual affordable housing is, other than it's not here. This is a giveaway to B&E, because they don't want affordable housing where they're trying to sell these million and multi-million-dollar apartments. The fact of the matter is their development says it's going to have a pool. This town doesn't even have a functioning pool. I think there need to be real answers as opposed to studies that everyone on their face knows is not realistic. The idea that over 200 units with sometimes 2 cars per are going to have less traffic than if it wasn't there is just illogical. I know you can't answer these questions now, but how many actual retail units are being put in? They're not going to be per capita compared to what is happening. So including all of this stuff is just going to overload an area. And so the thing I'd like to end with is, outside of voting you guys all out of office, what can we... Yes. What can we as a town actually do to stand up and stop this? Thank you.
Hi, Diane Infante, 47 Sherbrooke Parkway. We got a lot of Sherbrooke Parkway people. It's more of a statement than a question, but there is a question in here. When our neighborhood was first advised of the planning of this site at 45 South Livingston Avenue, we were allowed to participate and ask questions on the Zoom meeting in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. When inquiring about what type of development might be built, we were told that the new retail space would have a few apartments that were planned with the construction. But we were obviously misled by that statement. A new retail space, which would include 240 apartments, is totally ill-suited for that location for multiple reasons related to the public safety and quality of the life of residents. We've already voiced these concerns and will continue to express this to the town council. And in looking at other BNE real estate developments that I noticed, there were others that your organization built which include new retail and 2 stories of apartments, which would be much more appropriate. The Link in Aberdeen Township and the Lofts at Garwood are examples of this type of development that would fit aesthetically and blend well with the existing neighborhood and community. We have been told by our town council that your organization has ties to our community. Be assured that our neighborhood is not against the redevelopment. On the contrary, we have been aware of and watched the slow and seemingly purposeful decline of this area for many years. However, now that it is slated to be redeveloped, we need a thoughtful, careful, and beautifully planned space that will not be too large and dense for this particular locality. Thank you.
Good evening, Hong Yuan, 7 Montgomery Road. So I have a question for, I don't know, the developer or their engineers to answer me. What is the existing delay and level service of the corridor from along South Livingston Avenue from Route 10 to Oval? And what is those delay and level service for on Route 10 from Hillside to Mount Pleasant Middle School? Those 2 roads will be traveled every morning and evening by everybody to pick up kids, drop off kids, and I need to know the impact once this project is done. And also, for the purpose of traffic impact study, I want to point out the trip generation manual from ITE was published for planning purposes. That means we use that to estimate future development, which by right, your engineers will use that to estimate the future trip generation. But for the traffic impact study purpose, for existing, we use whatever is there today, which means not the whole square footage, but only the occupied square footage. Because if I were to make a traffic impact study tomorrow, I'm gonna go count the traffic. The road there will only reflect the traffic that is here today. And then there are a whole set of process to add the future traffic on there. And also the last one I want to ask is, I want to mention is, there's a 2018 draft traffic study. In that study, they estimated 652 parking spaces on site based on 258 units. And I wonder how that will be achieved. And also last week, I sent in my letter that I did my independent analysis. I could have put in my professional engineer seal, I didn't. But because I'm here just as a resident, I'm not representing anybody, I'm just here to express my concern. Okay.
Mike DeRocha, Sherbrooke Parkway. I was sort of intrigued by the fact that the building original plan went down 1 story, and yet there's still 240 units. It was dense to begin with. It's getting a lot more dense by crunching people together like that. I'd like to get an answer on how you're actually going to achieve that. And also, I just think that this project takes into consideration a bunch of retail space below. We looked at that at Livingston Town Center. Even 7-Eleven couldn't afford to stay there. what is the town going to do to make sure that whatever retail shops come in have some assurance of they're not going to get priced out and fluctuate back and forth like we've seen at Town Center? Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alina Tokar. I'm from East Cedar. My concern is around schools. So I would like to challenge a little bit that 13 number that you quoted. I believe you said 240 apartments, 45% one bedroom, and about 132 then remain two-bedroom apartments. Assuming one child per family, it's already 132 kids. Anecdotally, I can tell you I'm an immigrant. Money was tight. We usually cramped more people in one or two bedroom apartments. This town is proud to welcome a lot of immigrants these days. 13 is just unlikely. So my question is to you, what are you going to do about schools? Our schools are already giving up space. Our kids are giving up their fields, their sport fields. It's just unacceptable.
Richard Diner, 308 Beaufort Avenue. First, thank you very much for holding this meeting tonight, Jonathan and Barry, for the presentation. Very meaningful for the residents to have an opportunity to listen and to opine. First, I want to say that conceptually, I'm in favor of the concept. What I am opposed to is the size and the magnitude of it. We've never built a property in this town with the number of units per acre as this is being proposed. It sets an enormous precedent for every other developer coming behind it. And if you allow even at 244 units, you're at about 34 or 35 per acre, which is at least 10 to 12 larger. When this came to the planning board for their initial review, the concept of moving the affordable housing, thank you, off-site was not ever mentioned. The concept and why this was in keeping with the master plan is that inclusionary housing is very much what was the topic and why the density was even remotely being considered, although we weren't given the density at that time. So I'm opposed to the fact that we're not having any on-site low and moderate income. Not that it's a bad thing that we're moving some off-site for the purposes intended, but again, we're setting a precedent. So we're setting a precedent with regard to low and moderate income. We're setting a precedent with regard to density. I think those are gigantic mistakes. Last, talked about the opportunity, if this plan passes as is, coming to the planning board. Once it passes, the planning board will have little or nothing to be able to say. All of the important things such as size, density, setbacks, they're already built into this plan, and we will have no opportunity to deal with that. Thank you.
Good evening. I, too, am grateful to have the opportunity to talk. I moved into Livingston Les Walensky, Mohawk Drive. So I moved into Livingston about 30 years ago, and I moved to run the Bloomingdale's store in Short Hills. That was my job. And I did. And I've gone on to other stores in Nordstrom. I'd like to know, what retail stores do you have planned that's going to move into these spaces? I got to tell you, retail is difficult as can be to fill. New York is basically empty. I mean, you walk down the main avenues in New York and all you see are empty stores. So I'm retired now, but I've run big department stores, and I know the challenge in getting these stores filled. And you could end up with a series of people coming in with a lot of money invested and leaving. And be aware, it could be an ugly eyesore.
Hi, I'm Allie Brief, Brandon Avenue. I'm just trying to figure out, maybe I'm a little late in the game here, how the 270 apartments came to that area and how that has to do with affordable housing. Like, does anyone understand what I'm saying? Like, if the affordable housing is going elsewhere, then why is that huge thing happening right there? Does that make sense? Like, anyone understand what I'm serious. I'm trying to, I don't know if I'm missing something, but I'm just, I don't know. I'm going to leave it there. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not.
Hi, I'm Maya Goldstein. I live on Audubon
You don't have to
Road.
give your address. Minors, please don't give your addresses out. Thank you.
I'm currently a student at Heritage Middle School, and as a 7th grader, I could spend hours talking about how crowded the schools would be with more kids, because let's be honest, having small spaces wouldn't stop people from moving in their large families. I eat off the gym floor, and I almost get trampled every day, and the list goes on. But instead, I want to mention something even more important: safety. I used to walk back from 6th grade every day on that already dangerous street, and I almost got ran over many times regardless of my ways to prevent that. Just think, would I still be here speaking today if I had this apartment already built with its cars racing across the street while I was walking back? Probably not. Think of the future kids, the future leaders, before ruining our town. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pavel Weissman from East Cedar Street. So the development renderings are beautiful, but I have a question. Since they're geared towards obviously high net worth individuals, you know, with the Top Golf and the pools and all those amenities, what I haven't heard about is what's going to be done to improve Livingston public spaces, which we have a lot of needs here for. And so I urge the town council to represent your constituents in that regard.
Hi, I'm Cindy Korsbrandt. I live at 34 Sherbrooke Parkway, and my property is adjacent to the proposed structure. A few questions for you. First, I'd like to echo the sentiments of one of my neighbors. When the original proposal was done in 2020, it was mentioned there would be a few apartments, not a lot. At that time, my neighbors and I offered to be involved with the planning. We're all in agreement that it needs to be redeveloped. But we said, let us help you. We'll give you our best input. We'll work as a neighborhood. To this day, as far as I know, none of us have been involved with any of those subcommittees. My other questions for you are, we're still awaiting an environmental study, which would include a shade study, because even though you have lowered the stories, I'd like to know what the impact that would be, particularly on my property and of my neighbors. Also, currently we have a buffer. I would propose that we turn that into maybe a nice little park area that would be adjacent to my property, and not the parking spaces that are going to be coming right up to the fence. Okay. And so I urge you all to work with us on this. We asked you to be champions. I'm confident you will be, because the parking is also a concern. Grew up on Collingwood Avenue and saw the impact when planning for parking was purely executed for Jack LaLanne back in the day. And I could see it now that even if I can get out of the road, I might not be able to get out of my driveway, because the amount of parking will not be suitable if you have all this retail and the tenants that that overflow is going to be coming to Arden and Sherbrooke. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is James. I live in 32 Sherbrooke Parkway. My backyard just directly faces the parking lot of the projected area. Okay, I moved in this township 28 years ago. 8 years ago, I was retired. Now I am 73 years old. I just still love to live in this town because I believe I can enjoy my peaceful and quiet retirement life. So I just beg your pardon, everybody, Township Council and the developer. Please do me a big favor. Don't ruin my retirement life. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Dostalik, Collinwood Avenue. And I just wanted to say that Livingston is very welcoming. And in 2017, Livingston welcomed a school for needy disabled young adults, Our House. And Our House was given a grant of $400,000 from Livingston to open a group home on a residential street by the United Methodist Church. 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 24-hour site supervision. And the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage and Finance Agency kicked in $250,000. And the Division of Development Disabilities kicked in another grant. I think that the property looks beautiful. I think instead of sending the special needs housing over to our town on Route 10, I think keep that here and scale it down, because I think that's doable. You have vans for transportation, you have people working to give that 24-hour site supervision. And I did want to say, once you set that precedent for going up, the New York Sports Club on Northfield, they do want to enlarge that to 55,000 square feet. So that's on the drawing board, and they want to put in 10 EV chargers, light up the parking lot, and that's a residential area. So whatever happens with this site is going to impact that site. So let's keep it residential. Let's put in Our House or some other unit that might be a school-type unit. Thank you.
Hi, Lauren Zimmerman, 21 Wilson Terrace. I just have a few questions. I'm in favor of change. We moved into Livingston 7 years ago, and we live sort of around the corner from the firehouse. My concern is the traffic. We have 2 young children and who ride their bikes, and we walk everywhere. Livingston Avenue is 2 lanes. The speed limit, I believe, is 35 to 40 miles per hour. I'm not exactly sure, but on average, I see people going 45, 50, 55, 60. And somebody will get killed. And I'm very concerned it could be my children or somebody else's children. In the pictures that I saw of the rendering, I was wondering if there would be a traffic light from your entrance and exit. Between South Livingston Avenue and East Cedar, the light, there is no crosswalk, there is no traffic light, there is nothing for anybody to cross the street. So me and my family, if we're walking to Dunkin' Donuts, we either need to go up and around or cross the street in the middle with no light or crosswalk. So my concern is just the traffic and if there will be any crosswalks or lights. That's it.
My name is Ben Leone. I live at 43 Hazel Avenue. I came here tonight with, would you shut the mic? Not working. I came here tonight with an open mind. My wife has been coming to these meetings all summer long. She said, Ben, I think you better come. This is very important. So I came here tonight with an open mind. Barry spoke. We were introduced to John. Some numbers were given to us that we couldn't even see. Some other numbers came out that were just not to the people's liking. And the first thing Ed said was, show respect. What respect have you shown us? There's everybody here tells you what this project's about. I've watched you the whole time this meeting's going on. You're staring at the ceiling. You got your hands in your face because you don't want to even look at the speakers when they're speaking. That's respect.
Just for the record, in case you're really interested, what I was looking down is taking notes, so I have all the questions that people asked. Thank you.
Just for the record, I wasn't interested in anything you had to say.
Good evening. My name's James Fritzky. I'm located at 30 Sherbrooke Parkway. My property as well is adjacent to the property in question. First, I'll say ditto, same to everything that was spoken today. But what I'd add is certainly the plans we saw today cut into the green space that exists. I'm worried, being adjacent to the property, the privacy that we will lose having this property built close to ours, as well as the light pollution that would come from that into the back of our homes. Thank you.
Hey, Ed. Hi, I'm Willie Disler. I've lived in Livingston 28 years. Coached a lot of kids. You know, my kids, we came here to raise our children, and I love this community. I love it here. I used to live in the city, came to Livingston, I was very psyched, didn't have to pay for parking anymore. It was a big deal, you know. You just understand the passion of these people. I mean, everyone has such a concern about what's going on here, and it's gonna change the quality of life of this town. I mean, this has sparked such an amazing, unbelievable emotional response from everybody. Take it seriously. You're a Livingston guy too, man. Understand that. And make sure you listen to what people have to say, okay? Because they're part of the community too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Corsello. I live on Heron Road. I am all for development in this town. I think we have a lot of empty retail. It's looking sad. I've been here 28 years and I love it. My question is, I would love to understand the tax implications because I think taxes are, you know, on everyone's list, and I think we are not maximizing probably our intake of those taxes. So I think it might be helpful for everyone as well to see, you know, what that looks like down the road with all the development that's being proposed.
Hello, Casey Devlin, 41 Sherbrooke Parkway. This hasn't been mentioned yet, but I just wanted to point out that the proposed pictures that you had up there, it looked as if there were some entrance and exit passages that dump out onto Arden. And that is a residential, you know, portion of our neighborhood. It's already overused. It's already a traffic nightmare. Anybody who's gone through for a cut through, which of course many people do, anybody who lives in that area know that when you're trying to make a right or left onto Livingston Avenue or right or left out onto Mount Pleasant, sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes you wait 5 minutes before you can actually get out. And so adding traffic to that area, having that be a, you know, an entrance or an exit is going to create a backup, and nobody wants to be able to have a problem backing out of their driveway, nor do they want a line of traffic coming through the neighborhood because of that. So I think above all of the things that were mentioned tonight, that needs to be put on there as we are absolutely not okay with the traffic in and out dumping right directly into our neighborhood.
Hi, Allie Brief again, Brandon Ave. This is a different question. So, as someone mentioned, the town center A lot of stores going out. I was on the Arts Council and have been in the gallery that was just closed since 2007. Does not look nice with a lot of empty stores. If, like you're saying, the rent is really high and stores go out, are they just going to be kept empty for a while? Are you willing to work with the town and have something happen so that we could be involved and not have just empty retail space? That's it. Just.
Hello, my name is Tatiana Lisko from Cherry Hill Road. Just a little flaw in the logic. You are saying that there will be only 20 kids generated by this development. But the logic is that if the empty nesters are going to live there, it means that they will sell their houses. They're not coming from outside communities. And their houses will generate much more kids. Yes. That's the flaw.
Hi, Ashish Natane, 40 Sherbrooke Parkway. First of all, I really want to thank everybody. Is this working? Can you hear me? I really want to thank all of you for coming here just on a short notice. So thanks a lot. I would also urge the town council to notice the support this project is not getting, right? Current proposal, just now that we saw, I'm going to call it a little bit of a farce, because it's only going to reduce 15% out of the originally proposed 276 apartments. Those 15% were, I think, that were kept aside for affordable housing. Beginning of the presentation, it was mentioned that the renters would be young kids. Then it would be rented for empty nesters. Who really is it going to be targeted for? And how can we guarantee there would be no children? Are we going to discriminate? Are you going to stop people from children renting there? I don't think that's going to be an answer. There were mention about wider sidewalks. How is that going to be possible? And if that's the concern right now, why isn't that thing is going to happen right now? Why aren't we widening the sidewalks? Every day, I think one of our neighbors mentioned that their kids bike around there. Every day I watch so many children cross with their bicycles because on those 2 lanes, there is not even a bicycle lane. I don't know how kids risk their lives. What are we going to do to address some of those concerns? There is no merit to this project because you just showed some pictures about reducing floors. There was no mention of the height. What is going to be the actual height of the project? Again, town council, you should listen to all of us. Make sure you take our opinions in consideration, and stop this overdevelopment.
Vincent Kraus, 10 Audubon Road. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm retired from Skanska, which is the 5th largest construction company in the world. One of my jobs was putting together, design, build, finance, own, operate, maintain major projects, usually in the $1 billion plus category. So I sort of understand your business. I think everybody's concerned about the overcrowding. I say it's nice that you took it down 1 floor. Is it possible to reevaluate your cost and remove 1 more residential floor? That'll start solving some of the overcrowding. And then also, it's all apartments. Did you consider condominiums for sale? This way you'll get the return on your money sooner than financing apartments for over 20 years or so. And then you heard all the other problems about traffic and so on, but those are the comments I have.
Hello, Susan Park, 44 East Drive. I'd like to echo my thanks for having this forum to allow us to express our opinions. I do not live adjacent to the proposed property, and I'm thankful for that. I feel really horrible for the people who are going to be adjacent to this extremely dense property. And I hope as representatives that you keep in mind, I hear fear, really, and concern. People's retirement lives being impacted, people's safety potentially being compromised. And I know what the developers get out of this, but there are clearly people and individuals who are going to be hurt potentially by this proposed property. And I'd just like to say for the affordability part, this is the first time I've heard about it being off-site. And honestly, it kind of came across to me as a side note instead of an integral part of this project as originally thought about. So I'd like to see more details in regards to the affordability component. Thank you very much.
Hi, Paul Boxer, 12 Audubon. Ditto for everything that everyone said. I live on Audubon. It's right in that neighborhood. We walk our dog frequently in that area. We probably spent more time walking on that sidewalk than you guys have had in sighting it over there. And the idea of this project coming in, it's just insane. It strikes us as insane because the amount of traffic that's already there, the amount of moving cars going way too fast that are already there, kids walking on the sidewalks, bikes, all this kind of stuff that's already there, to add 240 units plus retail, all the traffic in and out. Everyone who's going to live there is going to have a car. There's no public transportation that will get them to work anywhere outside of Livingston otherwise. I just want to make sure to get one question in the record. What would be the impact of your proposal on emergency medical services, the fire department, the police department in terms of the need to hire more personnel or equipment, such as the fire trucks? Credit to whoever noted that in the first meeting. Fire trucks that are tall enough to reach the top of those buildings. Thank you.
I'm amazed by this turnout. Just out of curiosity, my first question is this normal? Howard Acres, 42 Sherbrooke Parkway. I want to know if this is normal turnout for opposition of a project. My next question is, the process of the voting, Mayor, and I asked you this last meeting, this was proposed to be voted on that night that we all showed up and which stopped. However, this plan is evolving as we speak. We hear new plans, new numbers, new heights, new floors. Once again, how was this going to be voted on last time if the plan isn't even in place yet? I'd like those answers.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Justin Alper, 56 Amherst Place. I think we need to start over as a community about planning in general, rather than having one developer after another come in and we're facing the same issues over and over. We really need to start from the beginning about how do we develop for a healthy, growing community. It's silly that we're continuing to put affordable housing in the warehouse district for special needs kids. The whole point of Lifetime was to figure out how to build a community that is inclusive, and we seem to be doing the exact opposite of what was intended there. To really get a handle on this development in particular, we really need to see the finances, Mr. Mayor. We need to understand what their investment to date is, what their return on investment projections are, from whom they're borrowing to finance the project, what investment rate they're getting, what's the change in ROI based on the changes that they're making. Will the community have the opportunity to co-invest? Because that would really be wonderful if we had the ability to invest in our own community. Are they going to be developing using the cheap wood construction, or are they going to use more durable construction? Is the bricks that he referenced only on the facade, or is it going to be structural? The problem with Town Center was it seemed like the developer had tried to extract as much money out of the community as possible, and then flipped it to outside institutional interests. Props to the developer for buying and holding, but question what happens to those cash flows over time once the value is paid off. Where does the money go? Always follow the money. Putting in a pool seems silly. As a town, we're investing so much in our pools now. We're going to want those residents to be involved in our community pools. 2 minutes is not really enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Art Altman, Noah Drive. So the projections are amazing. Less traffic and almost no school kids. It's wonderful, but what if the projections are wrong? Can the town assess the builder a special tax to pay for education of children over to 13? Say like $20,000 per kid. Same with traffic. If there is an increase, can there be another assessment levied to compensate the town residents for pollution and anxiety due to traffic jams? West Orange had the builders pay for a new school. The builders in our town are building thousands of units. Maybe they owe us a new school.
Sorry, real quick, Allie Brief again, Brandon Avenue. Sorry, I'm curious about construction and time and,
Wait.
you know, we're all talking about what's gonna have to happen after everyone's living there. What's gonna happen when things are being knocked down and built and all of that jazz, so.
Just a reminder, please don't come back to the microphone until everyone's had an opportunity to speak.
Hi, Marlene Laveman, East Sherbrooke Parkway. I just wanted to mention that we've talked about Sherbrooke and Rossmore, and those streets are really the most at risk. But the cut-throughs on our street, on Knollwood, East Sherbrooke, Mohawk, Freedon, we've watched kids jump out of the way not to be hit walking home from school. There's only sidewalks on one side. Kids ride their bikes there. The same thing. My dog has almost been hit 4 or 5 times. As people cut through, they come down going 45, 50 miles an hour. There's no stop signs as they go through the neighborhood. So my question is, can we include in this traffic study that we also look at the side streets, all of the side streets, and how they're going to be impacted by the additional traffic that will be put on the streets? My second question is, can we agree that you won't seek a pilot for a tax reduction if you do this development? Thank you.
Jessica Cooper, 40 Tremont Terrace. Ditto to everything that everybody said, and I'll just add, those renderings looked beautiful. I want to go there on vacation. I bet a lot of other people want to go there on vacation. What are we going to do to stop these renters from turning every single unit into an Airbnb and causing a huge influx of, or a complete cycle of people that care even less about our community than the people that would be moving into them?
Tim Foley, 16 Mount Pleasant Parkway. I want to start off first of, we do not have a downtown. We have 2 centers. We have Livingston Center and we have Northfield Center. This town was never built to have a downtown like Milburn, South Orange, Montclair. This town was never built that way. It wasn't built that way. All right? No downtown. Environmental study. We need environmental study. All right, traffic study, better traffic study, better environmental study. The existing town center was a bust. It's a bust. They have a parking garage that might have 2 cars in it all the time. Come on, seriously. All right, again, police, fire, first aid. Many people have said that. We're gonna need to hire more. We have a volunteer fire department that makes a lot of calls and you're pushing those young people out of town that would volunteer. Also, the traffic at, I was going to say Post 1, but Livingston Center, at 4 o'clock, you try to get a fire truck through that center, you're driving on the opposite side of the street. It's dangerous for the residents and it's dangerous for the firemen. All right? Empty stores. They're all over the place this town. And you're going to put more empty stores? You know what? The property owner, not the one. You say you live in town. Are you within half a mile from this project? Probably not. I am. Many of these people are. We're not happy about it. And the last thing, wasn't going to bring it up, but our town manager did. Sean Klein, he's not here, is because the property owner is his brother-in-law.
Hi, Elena Gellin, Tiffany Drive. I just wanted to say that myself and a lot of my friends all moved out of the city because we didn't want city living. We wanted to live in the suburbs. And this, to me, looks like a city rendering. I went to my daughter's back-to-school night at Livingston High School. You couldn't even walk through the hallways. It was so crowded. Yeah. I have a daughter in Heritage, and I have a daughter in high school. They both eat lunch on the floor every single day. Since Livingston does not provide a bus, I am the bus driver. The traffic to get to these schools when school lets out and before school, it's insane. I can't even imagine 250 more units with more traffic. Anyway, my question is, if stores can't stay in business now in all these empty spots, what makes them think that once apartments are in, the stores will automatically stay in business? I don't get that. Anyway, that's it.
Larry Roshman, 15 Audubon Road. Mr. Schwartz, thank you very much for coming. I admire you from coming in front of this crowd. And I also just want to say this crowd has such a passion. And the reason we have a passion is because we're invested in this community. Yes. And my question, and I think Vin brought it up and a few people brought it up, how come none of these rentals, it's all rentals that are being built. How come nothing is being built for people to buy, to be invested in this community like we are and care about this community? So that's one question I definitely would like to hear. And I'll refrain the retail stores. I've moved in about 15 years ago. My wife always corrects me. But for the majority of that time, that Bottle King has been closed. And we would say, gee, great Trader Joe's, great this, great that. If you can't get, and I don't know, maybe you weren't involved in that, but if the person who owned that property, and we said it before, could not fill that space, what makes you think you can fill other retail? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Good. Jennifer Kessler, 44 Baker Road. At the outset, I previously lived with my 2 children, including one in school, in a 2-bedroom home. It goes without saying that the proposed plan is quite lovely, irrespective of being ill-suited, as countless of our neighbors have already commented. My question is this: have you begun to review the impact that this development will have to our public services, like the police department, fire department, Department of Public Works, and other necessary utilities, many of which are volunteer-based? At what saturation do we reach a tipping point where we need to move to a taxpayer-funded system? Would these alleged residents even be able to volunteer, knowing they really have no vested interest in the sustainability of Livingston? As someone said, this is not my neighborhood, but these are my neighbors. You are all my neighbors. And just because it might not be my neighborhood, the operative word that now follows is yet. And with 1,146 apartment units approved across 7 projects in this town, all of our neighborhoods are yet. Thank you.
minutes wasn't enough. It's Sarah Goldstein again, 12 Audubon. So I have a couple questions that I didn't get a chance at first to ask. Number one, are you willing to keep the total height to 25 or 30 feet at peak? We hope so. Number two, are you willing to compensate the immediately adjacent property owners for the depreciation of their property value? Number three, are you willing to include a green belt, including the current trees, and add some new plantings? And are you willing to build and maintain the privacy fence for the neighbors in Arden and Sherbrooke? Number four, are you willing to conform to current dark sky standards? Number five, are you going to kick any current homeowners out of their houses? We saw that 2 properties were at risk. We don't want our neighbors to have to move. And finally, would you want this in your backyard? Do you want to look at a giant building that blocks the sun? I don't think so, but you can answer that.
Like a lot of people have said, 2 minutes aren't enough, so I'm back up. Jesse Agris. So, I find that this project is really unnecessary. We have projects that we have been asking for years on our street alone. And the fact that we're even considering this giant apartment complex is out of the question. I don't understand why there are things on our street like speed bumps that we've been asking you guys for 5 years to implement. And there has been no change at all. And I don't understand how we're already jumping to this. You guys want to answer that?
Just to be clear, it looks like I think everybody's had an opportunity to speak. We were going to kind of monitor it, and I think we're going to go till 9. So if anybody has a few more minutes they want to come up, if you have not had an opportunity to speak, please come forward first.
Hi, Boris Grushin, 7 North Drive.
Thank you.
I just want to point out that the number of people at this meeting, I think, speaks to the level of concern in our town. I've been to a few meetings before. They're not usually this well attended. This project might be getting a lot of the attention, but I think it speaks to the greater concern we have of the amount of development that's happening in town. And credit to the children who've been up here talking about the issues that they've seen. Credit to them, their parents, and I think the school system, that we're all, our concern is at risk with all of this development. People are here for the schools. We want to be in the suburbs. We don't want to be living in a town that has 4-story downtown buildings. We don't want a huge downtown. We're here for the suburbs. People knew what they were buying when they moved here, and that's what we want to maintain. The other frustration I think that I have, and I'm sure many people do, and I've heard this, is the constant statement that, well, there's this law and our hands are tied. If, as the town manager said, every town in New Jersey is dealing with it, that means most of New Jersey is dealing with it, and we should be getting together with these other towns to push back against it. I understand it's not just the town council, it's not just, our town manager, but if it's such a big problem and it's been going on for so long and every other town is dealing with it, we should be able to push back, and I don't understand why there hasn't been more movement on that. Thank you.
So because I'm sure it's never happened here, we're going to follow one Boris with another Boris. Boris Gavsky, 23 Audubon. I'm going to attempt not to reiterate everything that everyone else said here, no matter how much I do support it. I will ask a couple of things in the form of questions, I hope. So I saw the beautiful renderings, and they are beautiful. They fit beautifully in Harrison. They fit beautifully in lots of other cities that have that style of housing. What I'm wondering is a couple of things about those renderings. First, they were explicitly and only of the actual new development. How will the actual street look? Across the street from that, you've got derelict stores. You've got things that are out of business. Which wealthy empty nesters, and I don't know why they're moving here in the first place, but which ones are going to want to stare out of those expensive windows at derelict street across the street from them? Or is everybody going to be staring at the pool, which is going to be really noisy because you made a very nice echo chamber that's going to come to my house through whenever kids are playing? Coming back to the schools being overcrowded, thank you whoever said that they were just at open school night, because so were we, and we could not get through on time from class to class. It is dangerous, it is difficult, it is not the way we want our kids to grow up, and our kids actually don't even get to the lunchroom, they just can't. So what I'm wondering is what study or what were the numbers you used to come up with that 13.2 kids? What demographic were they based on? What metro area were they based on? And why do you think that's an actually realistic number? Because again, as an immigrant, as several immigrants have spoken, if there's a 2-bedroom apartment, that's at least 2 kids in there. That's how I grew up. That's how a lot of us grew up. It's gonna happen. And I heard, and nobody talked about this, so I was just wondering, are there actually like 1-bedroom apartments with a den, also known as a 2-bedroom apartment? And are there 2-bedroom apartments with a den, also known as a 3-bedroom? I'm just wondering, because just because it doesn't have a closet doesn't mean I'm not going to put in something from IKEA to get another 2 kids into that room. I do also want to understand empty nesters versus young professionals, what either one of them is coming to Livingston and this particular area for. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Barry Janae, 11 Wilshire Drive. I, like many of you, moved here because of the great reputation of the schools and the town in general. I think over the last 10 years, poor planning has put that at risk and is going to force many people who moved here because of that to move away from here. Our tax base will leave, and we'll be left with apartment buildings with people who just have a transient view of this town. And I greatly hope that you think very hard about before approving this.
Hi, my name is Ray Siegel. I live at 4 Garnet Terrace. I spoke before, but I didn't have enough time. I want to speak also about the schools and the 13 count. And I heard the same kind of BS because I went to every town center project. And the word empty nester came up a lot there too. That turned out to be very false. And that means you won't have enough parking because there'll be 2 or 3 kids in each apartment. And it's just a euphemism that does not come to actuality. And, but the thing about your 13 and the meta-study of 1,000 studies, I'm sure that close to 1,000 of those towns in the meta-study were not Livingston, where we have a top 10 school district in the state of New Jersey. So it's just total BS. Thank you.
Again, anyone who has not spoken yet, please, first.
Hi, my name is Virginia Duroshuk. I live at 37 Sherbrooke Parkway. I've lived in Livingston for 76 years. I hate to admit how old I am. So I have really seen the growth in Livingston. My parents lived on, I said this at one of the meetings in July. My parents lived on Irving Avenue, and then in 1956 we moved over to Sherbrooke Parkway. Just for the heck of it, my husband and I went around town to all the apartment buildings and condos. Yours included on, the Point and the one on West Northfield. None of these places have houses right next to them, right near them. There's a huge buffer zone. That's not a buffer zone, as far as I'm concerned. And the gentleman that spoke before who said the echoing is going to come, it is. All of these are houses. They can't even see the building, the multifamily buildings that are there, whether they're condos or whether they're rentals. Went to every single one of them. This is going to affect us tremendously. And is this the beginning of every house that is even near Livingston Avenue or even Northfield or Mount Pleasant? Is this going to happen to them if there's property that can be bought and apartments that can be built on those main roads? I don't know, but it's really sad. I'm going to be looking out of my house at buildings, just like in the inner city, where they built buildings right next to the houses, and that's it, the value of our houses on our street and on Arden are going to go down. It's very sad for us.
Hi, good evening. Susan Salzman, 29 Brookside Avenue. A couple of my concerns, questions are the number of parking spots. How many are there? Are they allocated for the residents? How many shops and how many parking spaces are allocated for shoppers? And how many parking spots are allocated for the visitors that are going to be visiting all of those residents? I'm an empty nester, and I know my kids come and visit me, kids, grandkids, coming to swim in the pools and take advantage of the amenities that you spoke about. To me, seems like there's going to be a lot of traffic going through there. Another huge concern are the kids on the bicycles. Having had a few close calls driving as a passenger with my daughter as the driver, coming so close to hitting a child on a bicycle when she was making a legal right on red and that bicycle didn't stop. I had to yell, stop. And the last thing anyone in this room wants to see is a child that's hurt by a project in an area that cannot support the traffic. Another concern is I'm on Brookside Avenue. Some of my neighbors on Brookside Avenue in Glannon suffer from flooding, from runoff. That's a huge concern. So thank you for hearing these, and I'd like the answers.
Good evening. I want to start by thanking the town council and the developer for this opportunity. I think this is great. The picture is beautiful. I'm all for, I'm sorry. My name is Bob Gebro, 30 Hemlock Road, Livingston. I've been a proud, very proud Livingston resident for 50 years, and I hope to double that, okay? I'm an optimist, okay? I'm not moving. I'm all for improving the town, okay? No question about that. I think we can all agree on that. That being said, I am very, very concerned about the congestion. People have said that they're concerned about future traffic. Well, I have news for you. There's already a tremendous amount of traffic on Livingston Avenue, okay? I live on the north side of town. When I have to travel from the south side of town to the north side of town to get to my house, I avoid that intersection like the plague. So where do I end up? I end up on Shrewsbury, corner of Shrewsbury and Mount Pleasant Avenue. You have about 3.5 seconds to cross that road, okay? That is very dangerous. It's not a good situation. There's traffic now. That traffic is going to increase by God knows how much if this development comes through the way it is now proposed, okay? So my question to the developer would be, would you consider drastically reducing the number of units to help us out as far as congestion? Please.
Bharat Janakarajan, 16 Audubon Road. So I echo everything that's already been said, so I don't want to repeat it. One thing I do want to say is to appeal to all the town is, the main thing is in the last 4 years, Livingston has seen a huge growth in terms of real estate, and that's continued to grow, right? That's one thing that we need to address, because whatever you're going to do now, you're going to set a precedence for all the future development, right? So whatever is taken here, all the other developers, it's going to be a landmine, right? People are going to ask for more development on the main street, on the Livingston Avenue, and it's going to grow. So I appeal to you that you set the proper precedence here, and you have the support of everyone here. So I appeal that you guys fight tooth and nail, even if it's in a lawsuit or something. We are all here with you. Thank you.
Everybody, just one sec. Anybody else who did not get an opportunity to speak yet? Because we're getting to repeats. Okay.
Hi, Paul Boxer, 12 Audubon. I just want to make a quick note about the study of the school children that everyone's talking about. The number of 13.2 on its face does seem ridiculous, I agree. But as a Rutgers professor, I feel free to criticize my Rutgers colleagues. And I needed time to take a look at the study. It's a great real estate study, no question. Good business study. I think what they did was, the way they analyzed the data was fine. However, there's one factor missing from that study that everybody in this room needs to be very aware of, including you guys, which is the quality of the school districts was not taken into account. I believe that our schools just went up in the rankings, national rankings, yes? Pretty substantially. That's not taken into account in the study. So I thank you for highlighting that study for me. I'm going to reach out to the first author tomorrow to let him know that I'm interested in taking a look at his data. It's not an adequate study to use for this particular purpose. It's great for what you guys want to do, but in terms of taking into account the quality of our schools and the fact that we are an unbelievably desirable school district, it doesn't hold water here. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Justin Alper, 56 Amherst Place. 4 things. 1, creating density creates real value. The question is, for whom do we account that real value? If we were building in a sense that makes a common sense to a community, that creates value, that lowers our taxes, that plans for the schools, that makes sensible investments in the community, there are all kinds of investments we can make. And as the 39th wealthiest community in the state, we're in a position to make them. Quick question, will the developer be using organized labor, or will they be using day labor from other counties? If we're going to be creating the kind of community where people want to live and work, will the stores that are planned support real living household incomes for people who live locally? Should we as a community be developing a ratio of wages to rents so we can judge things going forward? We want to be developing for communities. We don't want to cram it down so we're filling it up and it's only 1 bedrooms and whatnot. As a community, we want to be setting the definitive standard of excellence. We want to be inviting families in and growing at a sensible rate, probably about 2.5% per annum. We want to be growing. We have to plan for the schools, we have to plan for jobs, we have to plan for healthcare, we have to plan for social services. If we were doing this organically as a community over the course of time, it would make a lot of sense, and we would come together and we'd bring our skilled and educated people in to be a part of it. But if it is a developer and there's really no accounting for the cash flows, we've got a problem. And the time is to say, stop. Let's start over as a community. Let's start planning for the next 25 years. The last 25 were a bit of a wash. Let's get it right this time. And let's set the definitive standard of excellence as Livingston. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, I'm Wendy Weiss, 40 Tower Road. I'm just curious how many school-age children have moved into the View behind where Squiretown is on Eisenhower, and how many are expected in the apartments near the ambulatory center, and what happens when they tear down the Westminster and put another 500 there?
Hong Yuan. I ran out of time and I didn't know that we can come up, but it's going to be short. So on page 12 of the redevelopment plan submitted in June of 2023, the plan reads, the plan intends to maintain the commercial character of this proportion of South Livingston Avenue and to maintain Livingston as a primarily single-family residential community while recognizing the need for two-family and multi-family residential opportunities. I just want to have one last question. Do you think that the plan that's been proposed tonight really fulfill those two intents that was laid down in the plan that was ready to be voted on in July? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, we're now at 9 o'clock. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. I was frantically typing notes. Hopefully I got all the questions. As noted, there was a lot of comments, which certainly we heard, the mayor and council heard, that aren't something that we answer, but we certainly heard you loud and clear. So I am going to focus on the specific questions. Some may be more for the town to answer, some may be for the developer to answer. Let's see, starting off first, and this was a question that was asked or alluded to by a number of people related to the sufficiency of the parking and how many parking spaces would be provided. I think the architect has the numbers, and I don't know if you want to speak to RSIS.
Yep.
RSIS.
So I think this will pop up in a second.
Yep.
So the proposal that we have in front of us today has, as we said, 240 residential units. With that, 460 parking spaces devoted to just residential, which comes out to a 1.92 spaces per dwelling unit. And that's based on RSIS standards, which the New Jersey state sets for residential standards of parking throughout many municipalities. And Livingston has that within their base ordinance. For the commercial aspects of the proposed development, we are proposing 94 parking spaces dedicated to those uses, which equals 5 spaces per 1,000, which is a rather large number. Of those, though, there are 24 shared parking spaces. So 24 of those will be shared with the residential. With that, this is a rather large amount of parking for this kind of development. And all of this parking will be located on site, whether it's in the parking garages located in the basement and the ground floor of the building, or in the surface lots around the building.
Thank you. The garage is part of the building. It's underneath the building, so there isn't a freestanding garage. It's within the building. Yeah.
Correct.
This was a question that came up, and there seems to be people on both sides of the issue, was specifically relating to why the affordable housing wasn't on site. I think it's a combination of reasons, one of which, by moving the units off-site, it was one of the ways that we were able to kind of control and reduce the size of the project. There is a component of that we are required to provide for special needs and supportive housing. Obviously, I think the belief is that that is a very worthy mission to provide that housing. The location, and I speak as the father of a severely disabled adult who is in a group home setting that has 24/7 care. And so I know from personal experience that individuals of certain levels of disability, it simply isn't feasible or practical or realistic or even doable to have them in an inclusive environment, as much as we might like that. My son could never live in an apartment building like this. And there was a need, and as Jonathan mentioned, Lifetown and Spectrum, who are very, I think, valued members of the community, have a real interest to support their needs. And so this seemed to be a combination of factors that really led to a perfect synergy. That's my 2 cents as to why. It certainly was never anything they pushed as a handout or otherwise. To the young man who inquired about, well, there was a couple. So the young man inquired about sidewalks and streets, did mention, I think he's on Sherbrooke, that they do not have sidewalks. We will open and look into that. Since I've been here, we've committed ourselves to re-examining our sidewalks. We've changed our ordinance to facilitate them to be more quickly repaired. We got a grant. We're going to soon be replacing all the sidewalks on Northfield from South Livingston Ave all the way to the Circle, sidewalks down Hillside to Heritage to Foxcroft. We are committed to addressing all the sidewalks, so I certainly will look into the street that you're on and whether there's an opportunity for sidewalks there. This kind of parallels with another young lady that expressed her concern that the sidewalks proposed in the area shown for dining won't be wide enough or big enough. We do have a code that requires, even when there is cafe and outdoor dining, they still have to leave a sufficient portion of the sidewalk open and unobstructed, and I'm sure the developer and their tenants will adhere to that. There was a question about retail units in general and how much, it was a question of units, but really it's expressed in square feet, so I don't know if the architect has that number. Obviously, a certain number of square feet, depending on what the tenants are, could be more than, any number of units.
We'll give them the square footage, and then I can talk a little bit to it.
Sure, we're proposing about 23,000 square feet of retail. That includes the existing bank, the retail pad, and then the.
Not the existing bank.
No, sorry. The retail piece in a standalone building, and then the retail facade of the multifamily building. Sorry.
What's the total?
23,000.
I can speak a little to the
Yeah,
market, or do you want to get to that?
Yeah, why don't you touch on that?
Yeah.
And then there was another question later on about tenants and how are you going to get tenants to stay there?
Right. There was a lot of discussion about the viability of the retail. I mean, as a developer, who's done a lot of mixed-use projects, I mean, Town Center, I don't think was a well-conceived retail project. I think the parking has struggled. They counted on people going into the parking garage to park. We're not doing anything like that. Our retail parking is all surface parking. We have plenty of it. We probably have more than we need. We think that often retail under residential also is more viable just because people can go right downstairs into the building. With Town Center, it's also going to complement the Town Center people as well, being able to walk here. So I think that our retail design is going to be better. Our goal is to get a couple restaurants potentially as well, if they're available in the market. And just to answer one of the questions with regards to Town Center, that was a for sale project. That was had single family homes. It had townhouses with 3 or 4 bedrooms. Those types of projects bring on many more school age children than a 1 and 2 bedroom apartment project does.
And I just also wanted to add, and maybe we should have been referring to it not just as, quote, retail, but commercial type space, because the redevelopment plan as proposed envisions not only conventional retail, which I think some people alluded to is becoming increasingly challenged in brick and mortar, but other service industry shops, eating and drinking establishments, cafes, fast casual, coffee shops. So we did try and incorporate and be cognizant of the fact that regular retail stores are becoming increasingly challenged. There was a question that related to the reference to targeting empty nesters and specifically what services the town would be providing. The town has a significant commitment to aging residents. We offer a lot of senior programming, great credit to Jen Walker and her crew over at Senior Youth and Leisure Services. We do have buses. We would, again, this is not an assisted living facility, but, so I would expect they're active empty nesters, but we certainly are always open to expanding on any programming at any particular demographic. The lady who I believe herself is an engineer in the traffic field, there were certain questions that obviously we're not in a position to answer right now about the existing delay in the level of service on Route 10 from Hillside to Mount Pleasant. I was making notes. We're certainly cognizant of that. That is part of the more comprehensive, again, we're at the conceptual level now. Traffic studies, I'm not in the industry, so I don't know if they go over on Hillside that far away from a particular project, but much more detailed traffic information will be forthcoming if this process proceeds. Similarly, I'm not sure, I don't know that it was a question, but there was a reference to a 2018 traffic study that had a number of parking spaces. I believe they were somewhat similar to what they had up on the screen here, but we can follow up on that. Persistent question and concern that I think we all share, Mayor and Council, is the schools, the situations in the schools, the growth. Obviously, to a certain extent, they're a victim of their own success because it's such an outstanding school system. People want to move here and put their kids in. We are, in terms of what we on the town side are doing, we are working very closely with the Board of Ed, have had a great collaboration, had a recent 5-on-5. We're in constant communication with them about, developments, many of which were forced upon us by the affordable housing. But we are constantly in communication with them, project the number of units, how many bedrooms, are they 55 and over, where are they in the process, have they gotten site plan, have they gotten building permits, and we will continue to work with them. Obviously, as it relates to the current situation, and there was several references to eating on the floor, I had heard that. I don't know definitively. I know at the 5-on-5 that came up. The understanding that we left from the meeting was, and beyond repeating kind of what we were, I think what we came away from the 5-on-5 was that there was enough seats for every student. Some students may choose, but again, I would defer and direct you to the Board Ed on that because we don't obviously know exactly who's eating where. No, I'm not saying she's not. I'm just saying we don't really know. There's a question in terms of whether there would be a traffic light and crosswalks. I don't know definitively. I've done this long enough to know that the likelihood, that's a county road, the proximity to Mount Pleasant, and there are certain standards of separation. I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in more on that. It seems, I don't know if it's likely that there would be, I don't know, we don't have the traffic engineers here, but certainly that will develop as the traffic studies and things come out. If there is an opportunity to do what's called a warrant, that's the title that they call it. You have to have a traffic warrant to justify and meet certain criteria for a light. If that's an option, that will certainly be explored. Similarly, obviously, if there was a light, then there would be crosswalks. If there's not a light, I wouldn't think you'd want a crosswalk. No, I'm only saying what would happen if the process proceeds. I'm telling you that nobody's done an analysis because it's not far enough along to know whether there would be a traffic light or not. No, I can only answer the questions, and I assume the questions were posed in the hypothetical if this were to proceed. These are the questions. Obviously, if it doesn't proceed, there would be no questions and nothing to answer. So I'm only answering them based on, I assume all the questions are posed was if this happens, then what?
So you're neutral on this?
I don't have a vote, so.
Why are you going back and forth?
So let me try and get through the questions that we did have.
Don't forget, you guys said you'd be sitting down here with us.
That's true.
You said that. You said you'd be here with us, just like we are. You wouldn't be up there. Just saying.
Harry, may I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Really,
Go ahead.
This meeting was billed as a chance for us to hear from the developer. We've heard from you a lot. I get that. I'm just curious, at some point, I'd like to hear before you guys leave back to your houses in Livingston, right? And I'm speaking to you, Jonathan, and as a fellow resident here, you heard a lot of people criticize this project. My read of this vibe is that nobody wants this project as it's currently conceived. But I definitely think that we all would like to hear from you, your reaction to what you're hearing tonight. Yes.
I'm
happy to jump in a little.
You want to jump in, or why don't I go through and finish the questions that I jotted down, just so I don't lose track. And certainly I'm answering questions where they're town-related. In terms of sidewalks on streets, the schools is not obviously a question they can answer. This would be, who is it going to be targeted to? I wrote, I don't know if that's the tenants, because I think there was a reference, at least somebody came up and suggested that there was earlier a question about young adults, and then later a question about empty nesters, and the question that I jotted down was, who's it going to be targeted to? I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
You mean, I think I expressed that we generally see in these types of, is this working? Yes. Well, generally these types of projects that are primarily 1 and 2 bedrooms, especially when it's nearly 50% 1 bedrooms, it's usually a single person, maybe a young couple, and a lot of empty nesters. What's that? We don't know what the rents are going to be yet. We're probably 2 years away from getting, let's call it a year and a half to get through the approval process, 2 years, another 2+ years to build. We're talking about 5 years from now, but before we're renting. I don't want to speculate.
He doesn't want to speculate. So there's a question, I think it was raised by a number of people, the impact on EMS, police, and fire. Obviously, that is something that we look at very seriously on everything, and certainly Mr. Foley, who is one of our volunteer firefighters, I certainly salute him and thank him for his service. We are constantly aware of that, looking at relationships. I would note, again, that if not this, then either the existing use and/or a permitted use that would become 70 or 80,000 square feet of retail will have its own challenges and impacts on EMS, police, and fire. But we're aware of it, in communication with the chief on equipment. All the departments review any development proposals in terms of heights of structures, ability to get trucks in and out, et cetera. One of the things, it was not really a question, but it was posed, and I did want to make sure it was understood. When we talk about the plan evolving, or there was the demonstration of how floor had been taken off and things had changed, all those changes occurred from 2021 until when this plan was first introduced. It has not changed since that time. So what was presented is what the mayor and council had before them. So I don't want anyone to think they voted on something and then it's changed. Now, whether it changes going forward following this, that's another issue. But I did want everyone to know it wasn't like the thing changed after they voted to introduce it. There's a question about construction, number of questions I think Mr. Alpert had in terms of changes in ROI, investment, finances. Again, it is not within our purview to go ask every business to open all their books and show us what their returns are. As far as construction materials and methods, whether using brick and other things, that's governed by the state. If builders, build to the standard that meets the state construction codes, we can't make them, no more so than we could make any individual build their house with more expensive stuff than the state will allow.
If I can just, we always build our projects to NFP 13, so we go well above beyond the current code for fire protection. So all these areas are sprinklered, we have firewalls, so we build, knowing that fires can happen, and we want to make it as safe as possible for people to get out of the building, which is not code, it's well above code.
Question, I think it was Art Altman, about whether we'd be able to levy an assessment for additional students in the schools, excess traffic. Currently, the law in New Jersey is there are no developmental impact fees that are authorized. I would note that there has been a bill proposed the last 2 sessions that would open up more ability for towns to compel developers to pay. Right now, the only fees you can charge is their pro rata share of a required improvement to, say, for example, a sewer line, a water main, that if they're going to require, we need to make it bigger to get them water, we can make them pay their proportional share. But right now, legally, we're not allowed to levy an assessment for schools. Although, again, as noted, there has been legislation proposed a couple of times that would open that up. Can we include in a traffic study the side streets? Again, I'm not the traffic engineer. I don't recall the streets being referred to. They will certainly include those directly impacted under the applicable standards. So how far that circle of study goes, I'm not a traffic engineer. We'd have to look and see which specific side streets you're speaking to. Okay, well, then you know certainly better than I, and as I said, I'm not a traffic engineer, so if that's what the rule is, then I'm sure that's what they'll do. Sure. There was a reference, wasn't really a question, that environmental impact statements needed, traffic study is needed. Again, those, as I indicated at the outset, are things that would come and be required, but we're still at sort of the conceptual level, and this isn't part of the whole planning board application. Another one about schools. I'm not specific. I'm not even personally familiar with a shade study, but if that's within the normal industry standards of environmental impact studies, I'm sure it will. I just confess I don't know what a shade study is. It's not my,
Just explain to me as far as procedures are concerned. On July 24th, you guys voted for this development, right? And then the traffic study came out, you did all these other things, you said, hey, not a good idea. Would you be able to go back and change it? Or why are?
well, yeah, just to, yeah, to be clear, the introduction and adoption of a redevelopment plan is a two-step process. It is initially introduced and needs a majority vote of the town council. That is what happened. It was then has to be scheduled for a public hearing, which it was scheduled for a public hearing. Notice is provided by law. Anyone within 200 feet gets certified mail notice directly to their house. Everyone else gets it from our website, the newspapers, et cetera. That's what had happened, and then on July 24th was the scheduled public hearing. Number of residents turned out, had concerns, it raised questions. The council members thought it best at that point, well, let's wait, which ultimately led to this. So it's, when you say it hasn't been approved, it's been introduced, but it's not done.
Since these studies haven't been done yet, if on July 24th you had approved it, right, without the studies and without that information, then would you then the studies come and you would rechange the plan? Or how, I felt like, I'm wondering why you're not voting on it after everything's done.
Well,
That's all. I just don't
so
understand.
we had in advance had traffic, done, but not a site-specific traffic study. And similarly, environmental impact, that is something that if the environmental impact study revealed certain concerns, that those could be required to be addressed, even post-approval. Why not for sale? Why not for sale units? I can tell you this, legally, we are not required of any developer to say it has to be for sale or it has to be rental. I don't know if Mr. Schwartz is in a position to disclose why they're looking at a rental project versus for sale units.
We were asking the developer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying we couldn't require it. That's all I'm telling you. I just was turning it over to him.
We don't do for sale housing anymore. It's not part of our business model, and so we're proposing this project to be a rental project.
The perpetual cash free is invaluable, especially if you're drawing it out of the community.
So continuing down the list, there was, I think, Ms. Goldstein. There was a question about compensating owners for property values. There's no legal basis for that. Greenbelt, the developer, when we reference the Greenbelt, there is existing tree line currently between the rear of the Sherbrooke houses and the parking lot. I know that, and again, this would come out on a fully developed landscape plan, but certainly the redevelopment plan requires adequate buffering and landscaping. May not be as big as some would like, and we are certainly not in a position to compel them to donate their property to make a park, but I know there will be additional landscaping and buffering similarly, and I don't want to speak for them, but based on prior conversations, there was an openness to putting a privacy fence along there. Number of parking spaces, retail, parking allocation. I think we kind of went through all of those. There was a flooding. A woman who lives on Brookside, I believe, raised the question of flooding. We're certainly aware of ongoing flooding concerns in the Canoe Brook and in that area. As Mr. Schwartz indicated, they will be held to the new stormwater standards, which are significantly stricter than whatever, if anything, existed when this project was originally built as it sits today. So based on those standards, it's a certainty that it will be an improved condition in terms of retaining and maintaining on site and controlling any runoff off site in terms of net peak discharge and things, that it will be an improved condition. So any impact on the current existing condition and any flooding should be an improvement. There's a question, would you consider drastically reducing the number of units? That was, I think, for the developer. I don't know if you want to respond to that. There's obviously costs involved. It's an existing developed property, so there is certain acquisition costs and certain amounts.
That is a question I think you do want to answer.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're wondering where the number comes from and why it's so dense compared to other.
So I don't look at this as so dense. I think we.
More dense than anywhere else in Livingston?
I think we can debate whether or not this is a downtown project or not a downtown project. I think for the size lot for this type of location that fronts on, a 4-lane, 2-way street, major intersection, Mount Pleasant and South Livingston, I think it's an appropriate amount of density. I think. Well, let me finish. So I'm ready to jump in and address a lot of these things, and I'm happy to have candid conversation with everybody. Like I said, I'm a resident, so I do care about what gets built here. I think a few things are important to understand. This is not a wooded lot. This is a lot that can support probably nearly 100,000 square feet of retail. 100,000 square feet of retail is going to produce much more traffic than a residential project over retail. I know we have a traffic engineer in the crowd, and she thinks we're going to base this on what the existing vacant retail is. Yeah, that's part of the analysis, but the real analysis is what can actually be built here. Nobody wants what's here there currently, right? So. Well, so you should know better than anyone that we have to go through a planning board process. If the planning board's traffic engineers and their engineers say to us, this road can support it, planning board might find a reason to deny it based on that. I don't know, but because it doesn't work that way. That's not the process. The process that Barry has laid out is that there's a zoning process. In this instant, it was a redevelopment process. And that creates some bulk standards. We have to prove that this project works in front of the planning board, and that's going to be a process that you're all going to come out and ask questions. And there's public comment and public, at every meeting you can come out. We're going to have to prove that it works. And if they say, hey, you know what, developer, you need to upgrade the light. The light technology on the corner of Mount Pleasant, South Livingston isn't working. You guys need to upgrade that. We might have to do that. You might have to restrict left out. You may have to restrict no one can go out on Arden. All these things are going to come up. That all happens at the planning board level. I can appreciate all the questions that are coming up, absolutely, but we're not prepared to answer all these questions or prove why the project works, because that's really a planning board process.
Do you care that your neighbors don't want this?
I think what you have to, this town is 35,000 people. It's 35,000 people. I think there's a really good representation here of people that want, I do this every day. Generally, my projects, the people that come out against it are the neighbors right around it. So I'm sensitive to that, and I get that. But again, the people that live in the surrounding neighborhood, they didn't choose to live in a wooded single-family area. They chose to live in an area that does back up to a commercial corridor. Retail corridor. But apartments.
Suburban neighborhood.
But there's apartments all over. But there's apartments all over this town. The apartments are in other people's backyards. So we've lowered this building. We feel this is an appropriate building. We can't lower it more. We feel this is. Because this is the project that we're proposing right now, and this is what is economically feasible to make this project, and it also allows the project to be built to support the special needs housing that we're going to build on our nickel, and while there's a lot of discussion about school-age children, this town has a state law that mandates them to build a certain amount of affordable housing. In conjunction with that is also special needs housing, and while I understand the school systems you may feel are overburdened. It's not really but the town, you have to understand something. The town, it's not their fault. The state mandates them to build more than 1,000 units. This number is not stopping.
How should we change the law?
We'll get to that, but in July of 25, and I don't want anyone to take this as a threat, because if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it. This town's going to have another large obligation, and 7 acres can fit a lot more units than 240. We're taking almost probably a third of the property and putting a single level retail building. Someone in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it might be, they might come in and scratch that plan and go for 400 units, because this property can probably fit it. And we chose not to take that approach. The mall property, the Westminster property, all these other properties that are going to get passed with over 1,000 units, all these properties were forced down the town's throat with no public input, right? Because the state told them they have to. Fair Share Housing told them they have to. We took a different approach. We said, we're not going to sue the town. We're not going to force it down their throat. We're going to work with them for 5 years. We did a public presentation in 2021 with a far larger project that we showed you. This is a scaled down version. It might not feel like it, and I'm sensitive to it, but it is a scaled down version, and it is significantly less than what can be in the future. You could nod your head, but the reason why the town got forced a lot of projects down their throat because not good planning like this. They're going through a planning process to keep this from being a much larger project.
On these fair housing obligations, maybe the town council manager can give us an update about to what extent the town has met its obligations on the fair housing unit, right? Because a month ago, I think roughly by the end of July, I read an article, including some of the statements from the town attorney, saying after the third round of obligation, the town actually have more than 120 credits in terms of meeting these obligations. And there is no need, even there's no need in the fourth round to build any additional fair housing unit. So I think here the question for the developer is, and the town council is this project part of the third round obligation?
So,
if it's not, then we're not under any threat of any obligation under developer's remedy.
so the answer is, as was alluded to, there's a fourth round that's coming in less than 2 years from now, which we have been working very diligently to try and get ahead of this, which quite frankly was not done perhaps as well as it should have been done 10 years ago, 15 years ago, to where we found ourselves over the last 5-6 years having to take more units. This particular project, the credits to be earned from this project, as well as we were able to, and with the assistance of town council, who also is our affordable housing council, to incorporate certain projects where they were suing, wanting to get in the third round, and ultimately the settlement was, but we get the credits for those in the fourth round. So these are counted, and that's where Mr. Cantor referenced that we would have a surplus of credits to where we think that we're working very hard to be hopefully very close right now to settling what we think is going to be the fourth round.
But
that is part of it, yes.
Is it included in the plan of the fair housing redevelopment of the town?
No, third round. It's not in the third round settlement agreement that's on for compliance hearing. But again, as I mentioned, we have prospectively looked to try and lock down the fourth round.
Yeah, but we do still have an unmet need. We didn't fulfill our entire need for fair share housing, so there's still an unmet need going towards the fourth round. So rather than having the projects jammed down like they happened in the third round, we're trying to pick projects out that make sense to the town to keep density down, so we're not faced with developers coming and squeezing as many units as they did through the last 10 years through the third round. So this project would either count credits towards third or fourth round. We would try to negotiate to have some surplus credits moving towards the fourth round. So the next round of development that comes in through affordable housing will look very different than the third round. We'll be able to pick and choose our projects easier rather than having to take everything that comes down. So this is really a lot of planning. And again, the surplus credit, I don't know of any other town, maybe one, that has this surplus credit built into their agreement. So we already have a gigantic head start going into the fourth round. And if this project were to move forward, we would look to create surplus towards the fourth round. And as Ms. Schwartz indicated, the fourth round is coming. When we litigate these fair share housing, the first thing they're going to look at is this project ready to go? That's what fair share housing wants to know. Is it going to get built? Is the developer ready, able, and willing to build it? Have they worked with the town? Is the zoning in place? And, I don't want to misstate, and I don't want to take any, litigation advantages away from the township, because we would be adverse to Mr. Schwartz in that litigation. But I can tell you, we'd be hard-pressed after a meeting like this, and after years of preparation and having a zoning ordinance drafted, that one, the township, we didn't negotiate with them, and then this developer isn't ready, able, and willing to build starting in 2025. What affordable housing wants is units. And I know you've seen in towns, there's overlay zonings put in place and nothing's built. And that doesn't really count. What those overlays are trying to do is encourage development, but Fair Share Housing knows that certain pieces of property are just never gonna get built for certain reasons based on the ownership of the property, how long they've sit vacant. But what we have here is a developer, again, who's ready, willing, able to build. He has a plan. So I think, if it came down to 2025, which isn't that far out into the future, the township will be hard pressed to keep this project out. And I don't really want to comment on Mr. Schwartz's, that he thinks he could get more units in. But it is likely that this is one project that even with our surplus credits, this could be the first project in the door in 2025, given all the work we've done. And we would lose some of the leverage we have now in taking that fourth floor down and reducing units. And it's not lawyer talk. I mean, we saw what happened in the third round. We see what's happening in the state, and people get up and say we should change the law, but it's not a law. And I think that's what a lot of it's a constitutional mandate. And this is how the constitutional mandate is being implemented. So it's not a law that can be changed. The Supreme Court of New Jersey has found that affordable housing is a right in the state of New Jersey, like any other right. And Mr. Alpert's trying to speak over me, but that's what the law says. If you read the Supreme Court's opinion, so it's not just a matter of changing the law. It's either an amendment to our New Jersey Constitution. What's really gone awry is the implementation of this constitutional mandate. And we object to Fair Share Housing Corporation being the implementation of this constitutional mandate. But that's the way it's gone. And we're doing everything we can do to stop our fourth round. We're trying to plan better than our prior council and our prior township did over the third round. And it's not this council, it's leading up to this round. And a lot of towns were surprised in the third round, and a lot of towns had a great obligation. We see what's going around the neighboring towns. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'm speaking too much, so I'm a lawyer, but we do still have an unmet need. It's a pretty significant unmet need. And again, if it came in now, we would try to argue for surplus credits toward the fourth round. Otherwise, I think this would be the first project probably knocking down our door in the fourth round.
And it would be helpful if there was a meeting explaining the actual Fair Share Housing, or a presentation online or something.
Our agreement is online. It is available. We've spoken about it at several meetings. I know I see Mr. Izzo in the back, and the Tribune has covered it. But I guess we could do another meeting. But before every agreement, there's a lot of discussion in public about where we're headed, where we're going. And each project as it comes up, there's ordinances, they're introduced, there's a public hearing, just like this one. So there's plenty of opportunities for public input at all those occasions. But certainly, I think actually the Tribune did a FAQ. I think they did a full 2 Tribunes ago that went through our agreement. I know Mr. Lewis provided a lot of statistics. I think he gave all the unit counts, all the affordable unit counts. So that's probably a good place to look. I'm sure it's available online. But I think with the council's discretion, I'm happy to discuss it at any future meeting.
Do the Democrats have a plan to claim responsible control in Trenton?
I think also I just would want to jump in one thing that, I think what I'll call it the subcommittee was trying to do is to be sensitive to some of these issues, which is there are going to be a lot of school-age children coming in on the affordable housing projects or the inclusionary projects. This project is trying to not get away from its obligation, but to pay for special needs housing off-site that is also a big need. So they're trying to be sensitive because it's a fact. Barry can produce the numbers at some point. The affordable housing produces many more school-age children. So this is not going to have that. It's going to have the special needs housing, which is what we tried to do to, help to offset to some degree.
No, they require you to build new housing to comply.
This is. Go ahead.
Wish.
I'm a new resident here in Livingston. I moved about a year back. If it helps with the data point, we were living in Jersey City. I can tell you I raised 2 kids in a 1-bedroom house. We were looking for apartments in more likely than not, most of your apartments will get filled with children, most likely, especially since it's not condos.
Yeah, but they don't. We have the data, we have the statistics. They don't. These small units. And to answer one of the questions with regards to, if you own a single-family home and you're ready to downsize, you better hope that there's going to be a young family buying that house. Otherwise, no one else is going to buy that house. You need the young families to come back in when you're ready to sell your house, or this becomes a community that does not grow and does not thrive.
That's natural progression.
Right,
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Think about is how we plan ahead to make sure that we have enough schools and more classrooms and less kids in our public schools classrooms as this community continues to grow. It's fine that we are bringing, from my perspective, those buildings, and we are developing the city, and we have to obey the law and build more housing. Fine, let's do it, but let's not do it at the expense of the kids that are here already. So, do we need more schools? Do we need more classrooms? So let's plan ahead.
You're absolutely right, but that's one of the reasons why we met last week, 2 weeks ago, with the Board of Education. We had a 5-on-5. We meet once a month. There is a group that's meeting, I'm part of it, and so is Councilwoman Begoli. We meet once a month, and we have these great conversations, and we're talking about other schools, possibly a Monmouth Court that's in existence. So there are these discussions that are going on currently on a monthly basis to make sure that we are planning ahead for that. The issue that, one of the issues that we've talked about is that a lot of the, I'm not sure they're overcrowded, but a lot of the issues in the schools right now are not because any of the projects that we've approved, because only 2 projects have a shovel to the ground, the ones that we've talked about. None of them have even, they're still 2 or 3 years away from kids moving in to those projects. So that's why it gives us the ability now and in the future to keep talking on a monthly basis to work. I totally agree with you, and that's one of the things that we talk about often is how we work together, and we've worked together a lot recently to make sure that that we don't have these issues going forward. So that's that is we are talking about that. We are working with that.
How can we get more information about that?
But I think it's a great. I mean, we had a meeting on we talked about. I'm sorry. We talked about it at the 5-on-5 meeting. The Councilman Begoli and I meet once a month with that. Councilman Begoli, Councilwoman, I'm sorry, Rosie. Councilman Begoli has also been asked to sit on the what's the committee that the Board of Ed is starting? The strategic planning. I'm sorry. The structure, the infrastructure. There's a well, I forgot what it's called. There's a new committee that the Board of Ed is putting together to discuss the schools and what the needs are, and Councilman Begoli is going to be the representative from the town council. They're going to be meeting once. So there's a lot going on. Facilities. There's a lot of meetings going on that.
I haven't been, it's a Board of Education initiative. I have not been told the details of it yet.
But
First meeting's October 4th.
the first meeting's October 4th. Is it in public or no? The first one.
I don't know, there are 46 people on it.
Yeah, there's 46 people. They actually went out to the town, and they asked for people to submit from the town, in addition to elected officials, to be on there. So it's a really good, well-represented crossroads of the entire community. So I'm looking forward to hearing as they continue what the reports are.
Excuse me, I just have one quick question. Thank you. The setbacks that have been proposed, are those set in stone at this point?
Setbacks for this bill.
The 10 feet from my backyard. Is that 10-foot line along Sherbrooke Parkway, is that set now, like it can't be changed, or?
Well, the redevelopment plan, so to be clear, there's the 10-foot is only to the parking, not to the building, right? I think, hopefully you're aware of that. Yeah, so that's to the parking. The building, I believe, is 50 feet to the building, and then it's currently set back as proposed further, and then obviously the step backs. But again, the plan has been introduced. That's the way it's currently written. The plans can be amended. They could, even if it was adopted, it could be amended at some point in the future. But yeah, the 10-foot is only to parking. I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
It's not the parking I'm worried about, it's the trees that are there now that would do a significantly better job masking your building than cutting them all down and putting up a 6-foot fence would.
We do plan to try and save as many of the trees within that setback as we can. And ones that are big, we're gonna try and, find places to work around them. So we are gonna try and keep as many as we can.
I'm just curious how far elected officials have any comments or concerns or questions for the developer, since that was part of the billing of this meeting. You guys up there, you've been listening just as we have. Any questions, any comments, any concerns for these folks? Anything? You represent us. Anything?
A lot more information.
You do, you've got all your...
Here's my comment. Here's my comment, okay? We've been dealing with fair share housing for many years. And when you say, the town doesn't have a choice when a plan comes in, okay? You don't want to believe it. Hell, I don't want to believe it as a citizen. However, take the Westminster Hotel, for example. And Justin, you were there that night, okay? When Westminster said, we want to put, I think it was close to 600 units up there, this town council said no, okay, to them. To a point where we ended up having a meeting here, and we said, no, we're not, okay? In our fair share housing plan, okay, what happens is the town has to sign off on it. Even though they wanted us to do 1,159 fair share low affordable housing units, that would have ended up being almost 5,500 new addresses in our town, okay? A town of 10,300 addresses, okay? We got it down to like 200 and something. However, the Westminster, okay, after we said no, okay, we signed our contract with Fair Share Housing. The Fair Share Housing Corporation signed the contract, okay? The third signature is the judge. Once the judge signs off on it, the contract is signed, sealed, and delivered, okay? A couple of weeks before the judge was to sign off on this contract, the Westminster Hotel said to Fair Share Housing, I want to be included in that plan. Well, we said no already. Well, Fair Share Housing said, no, you need to reconsider. Okay, we reconsidered, okay? To a point where we had to have another meeting to reconsider, and we said no, okay? But what happened is Fair Share Housing took their signature away, okay? And now we're in limbo because of that, okay? No, Justin, stop, please. Let me finish, Justin, okay? What I'm afraid of is this builder, okay, or the landowner, they can go and sell this property. And that you could put all the applause that you want. This builder can go in and sell the property to another builder. However, in 2025, okay, that builder is going to come to Fair Share Housing, and not only are they going to want the units that they have now, they're going to want 600 units. And you want to know something? We can't do a thing about it, okay? That's my fear. My fear is we know what we're getting now. Justin, okay. We know what we're getting now, but you know what? If we last to 2025, we don't have any conversation in the game. We have nothing in the game. That's what I fear. That's what I really fear.
Is there somewhere on the website that sort of quantifies what affordable housing, like what the income thresholds are for all of that? Because I don't know that as a community we fully understand. Because that could be one day my kid grows up and can't afford to live here.
I think that's the state's point, right? The state is trying to allow or encourage people from low and moderate income households to be able to come into a good school system like Livingston. That's sort of the point, and it's the town. It's really out of the town's hands. And
Specifically to your question, there is a document. I don't know if it's on our website. I can make sure it gets up there. It's actually based on, it's a 3-county area, Essex and whoever, and there's different thresholds for very low income, and moderate income, and there's certain percentages of each have to be for low mod, whatever, and they're there, and it's based on, it's a whole chart. If it's a 1-person, 2-person, etc.
Yeah, if you look, it's all governed by UHAC, Uniform Housing Affordable Controls, and it's all on the DCA's website.
Thank you.
So if I can just clarify and paraphrase, not really speak to my kids. Mayor, in response to my question, what do you guys think? What are your comments, questions? Essentially what you're saying is you heard us all with our concerns, the trees, the flooding, the traffic, the density, which is way higher than anything else in town. Don't say you're moving for low density, it's not low density. Your response is there's nothing we can do. This is it.
I-
All of this was sham. To come
I
listen to this.
don't think it's fair to suggest that that was their response.
I'm paraphrasing.
I didn't hear that.
Well, Sumit, what I heard was that, you know, there's all these articles in the paper about the town plan and the town planning, this and that. But what I just heard from you is the town is no longer allowed to plan. So I understand what affordable housing is. I'm in favor of affordable housing, but if there is a town plan, the town can talk about how the town develops, right? In other words, like, we don't want a Livingston Mall to go up where the YMCA was, right? And the town has say in that. We have say, that's what zoning rules are about. We can say what we put where. What I just heard, which I think is another way of what Paul just said, is the state can come in and say affordable housing wherever this developer wants it. And I mean, you guys are the experts. I don't understand it the way. I understand that if every town in New Jersey has affordable housing, then the economic inequalities can be leveled out. And as you said, and I'm sure it was said many times today, my apologies for coming late, people move to Livingston for the schools. Right. So if we have zoning, if you, meaning us, the town, have zoning powers, okay, what's to stop, but fair housing trumps that, then why is there a town plan? What's to stop a developer from coming in and saying, we're going to turn all of South Livingston into tall apartments, and it doesn't matter that it's, you know, a 4-lane street. So what is it that we have the power to do so we can still meet our affordable housing, not just meet it as someone over there said, who I didn't see, we were going to want our children to live here. It's why we all live here. So what can we do to make Livingston an affordable housing town and not make it a poorly planned town? And that density of 276 apartments right there, 254, okay.
240.
All right, so how is that gonna change the traffic buildup and all the other buildup there? What power does the town have to say, this is a fine development, that's not the right address? Is that kind of what you're, okay.
I do think the traffic is not going to be worse than what is there now.
Well,
I think
Guys,
okay.
no, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank everyone.
It's
for
not
coming.
going to be what I didn't mean to say what's it's not I didn't mean to say what's there now, because obviously a lot of it's vacant. It's not fair to compare it to that. That is not the correct way to measure it. It is what can be built there as of right today. It's a retail that right. The
I'd say something, now's a good time to think about who you've been voting for years. You put people in charge in the state and the federal government who have caused all these problems, taken away the power of towns. Robert Hart must be turning over in his grave. They worked so hard to make this town what it was for years. You have, the elections have consequences. Think about it. I mean, it's too late now, that's down, but the governors, the federal government, they picked the justices that made these decisions. Think about it, okay? It's very important. Because nothing can, and what he's saying is true, I believe it.
Can I ask one thing about rentals? I think that with rentals, you're bringing, there's no commitment from anyone except maybe a 6-to-1-year lease. So you can have people moving in and out of there that really could not care about the community so much as where they're maybe getting off the bus from the Manhattan, going into their beautiful house. It was beautiful, but I just don't know that if they're all older, they're not gonna be interested in the community.
So-
They're not gonna go to the.
So it's 10 o'clock. We've been here for 3 hours. I want to thank everybody for coming. Especially want to thank Jonathan Schwartz, who spent 3 hours here and gave a great presentation and deserves a round of thanks. And the architect as well, and Barry. And I want to thank everybody for coming and for their opinions this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sure. Sure.